So once again, good morning and welcome to the Landmark Site Workshop. I'm Mayor Bill Robertson. I'm thrilled to see you all here today. A number of people who were here yesterday, welcome back. Those that didn't make it yesterday, this should be great. I'm sure this enlightening session will inspire you all to reach our collective highest potential. Please join me in thanking the town's economic development team for all their hard work in getting this presentation to Okotoks, and also a special thank you to our sponsors, the Town of Okotoks and the Okotoks Network, and to our partners, the Okotoks and District Chamber of Commerce. If you're not a member yet, be sure to join. Community Futures Highwood and Old Town Okotoks. Let's have a hand for the sponsors and partners. Today, with the Landmark site in mind, we will learn about how tourism marketing and developing the downtown core can increase local and visitor spending, and of course, get them to come back again and again and again. Our presenter, Roger Brooks, President and CEO of Roger Brooks International and certified speaking professional, is an expert in the fields of tourism, community branding, downtown development, and destination marketing. We attended a session yesterday morning, great session, and came away with a number of things. Some of the things that I picked up on in particular. I'm a cyclist. We don't have enough bike racks in the downtown. But in particular, making sure we're marketing our town 24/7, 365. And of course, one of the big ones that stands out is not having brochures out on the highway. We've got those great message boards. They show really well at the pullout as you come into the north end of town. But as Roger said yesterday, if you don't have a pencil and paper or perhaps a cell phone to take pictures of those boards, you walk away or you leave there not having all the information. So if we had some brochures out there in an enclosed cubicle of some kind, and people could take that away, because once people get to your destination, 81% use those brochures. That was a figure I got yesterday also. There we go. For more than 30 years, Roger has helped transform ordinary places into extraordinary destinations. And of course, Okotoks, in my opinion, is already extraordinary, so are we going to be extra extraordinary, right, Roger? There we go. He's worked with 1,000 communities around the world, guiding them in their branding, marketing, and product development efforts. Author of the book, Your Town, A Destination, and a U.S. Travel Association board member, Roger is a well-known, I like this term from yesterday, thought leader and change agent, energizing communities into action. He's all about making something happen. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm." Roger Brooks lives by this motto. For those of you that weren't here yesterday, wait until you see his enthusiasm. Here to share his enthusiasm with us, please welcome Roger Brooks.
How is everyone? All right. Okay, I'm going to have you, we could turn down the volume a little bit. There we go. Perfect. We didn't get a chance to test it. So how many of you were not here yesterday morning? Go ahead and raise your hands. Okay. I'm not going to do the whole presentation I did yesterday. This is a very open format. I'm here to answer questions. And if anybody has, what I want you to do is ask questions. I don't mind the hard questions. You can talk about money. You can talk about politics. I mean, how to get stuff done. I want to make sure that, so for you that weren't here yesterday, I put up 60 suggestions. And I want to reiterate this, that what we talked about yesterday is we have been here since Sunday. When I say we, my wife is with me. She's not here this morning. She's walking your pathways this morning, which are awesome. And we've been here since Sunday. We got no information in advance. I think Shane sent us a couple of brochures. That was it. Didn't say where to stay. Didn't say what to do. Make sure you see this. Make sure you see that. Nothing. As a matter of fact, I think on Monday or Tuesday, we were eating over at Heartland Cafe, and Shane was actually there, but he didn't want to come up and spill the beans who he was, or that he was, we'd met a long time ago. But, and so these are just suggestions, but they're meant to be conversation starters. You got to start the conversation. And so I think here we go again. My microphone, I don't know what the deal is with that. So I want to answer questions. And if you say, well, Roger, can you talk about this or this or this or parking or what do we do next, I want you to ask the hard questions. And then we can always pull up the slides. Can you show that again yesterday? I'd be happy to do that. Okay? Yes.
In your experience, you've worked with many towns, and I'm assuming that some are more successful than others. Do you find that the towns that you work with take a holistic approach where they look at all the recommendations, pick out the top 10, 25, 2, whatever, and then put together a holistic plan that's long-term that they work towards? Or do they take it more piecemeal, like this suggestion, that suggestion, sort of a la carte?
Okay. And by the way, I'm going to repeat, I won't do a good job repeating it, but I'm going to repeat the questions because we are on film, and so they want to hear that. What she asked is, obviously some communities are more successful than other communities. And by the way, we do have microphones if you want to come up and talk into the microphones too. But, and she goes, so do people generally do a holistic approach? Does that see more success? Yep. Does that see more success, or do people kind of do it one project at a time, piecemeal, right? Did I kind of phrase that right? You know, a couple things. The reason why some communities are more successful than others is because they have strong champions. And strong champions are the people that will never take no for an answer. They will pay the political price to make a difference. So yesterday, the nice lady right here, what's her name again? Yvonne was here. Yesterday I said, you know this building downtown, I think this is probably one of the uglier buildings downtown. You know what, I would be so bold as to say we should tear that down and put a parking garage there. She owns it. The point is, somebody has to have that conversation. And quite frankly, we were talking this morning, she says, and I said, well, if you could build your building right up to the sidewalk, zero setback, and put retail on the first floor, maybe put second floor and have your tenants there, and then put parking behind it, and then behind it on the second floor, and then a third story of parking, you'd have the parking you need downtown, you'd have zero setbacks, we wouldn't have all this asphalt jungles all the way back, you know, the strip mall type of deal. But the point is, she was okay with it. It's a little bit shocking, right, to have somebody say, take out my building. And so, but you have to have strong champions. That's what makes successful communities. They're the people that will pay the political price to make a difference. You do need to have a holistic approach. So one thing we talked about yesterday afternoon, we went over to town hall and had a little conversation. Here's what you need to do first. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do in Okotoks. And number one, you need to decide what downtown is going to be about. As a matter of fact, you might even figure out what are we about in Okotoks. One thing that came to mind when we first got here was, man, I thought that Okotoks should be the sports capital of Alberta. And I'm not saying that's your tagline, but you'd be known for your sports facility, your pathways, the lifestyle of living this sporting lifestyle where we're out on our pathways, we're out on the river, we're outdoor, you know, kind of recreation without, recreation the most overused word in the world, by the way, outdoor recreation. And so I thought, man, maybe as a town you have this focus on this really kind of wellness, good food, this recreational, sports-oriented lifestyle. And then you say, now, who are we trying to attract? You want to know what I thought? You should be attracting people in their 30s, their early 40s, young families with kids, because they would rather live out in the country like Okotoks, yet only be half an hour away or so from Calgary, where you get all those amenities when you need them, when you want them, but you're living here, we got good schools, a beautiful setting, you're in the country. I love Okotoks because a 2-minute any direction drive from right here, you're in the country. I mean, it's barely 2 minutes, right? I mean, you just go up one road, you know, one click and you're there in the country. And so you have to start with a holistic approach. What do we want to be known for? So downtown. If you ask me, what should downtown be known for? It's the place we go to hang out after work and on weekends. It's good food, it's great retail shops, and it's entertaining and festive. Buskers, a plaza, music, ice skating in the winter, a splash pad in the summer, all of those things. And then once you know that, who you're going to try to attract. Because if you said, we want downtown to be the nightlife, we want it to be the bar scene, we want 6 microbrews, and by the way, I think you do need a microbrew or two. But if you wanted to be the bar scene with rock and roll bands and everything, we're going to cater to the 20-something people. It's going to look a whole lot different than if you program it to be about young families. Because if it's going to be about young families, we might say, where do we put the carousel downtown? See what I mean? So that's the holistic approach, is what do we want downtown to be known for? And then it needs to be a public-private partnership. And so let me touch on this. I promise I won't answer all these questions this long, but this is a good question. Is number one, it has to be a public-private partnership. Yesterday, I put up a slide of a strip mall, and I said, I'd like this strip mall. So I'm going to take, the one where, is it Gourmet to Go and the radio station, the Eagle? I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could take that end where the Eagle is everybody picturing this? Where the Eagle is, and run it all the way up to the sidewalk. Because on the other side of the building, it does go back, so it would make a U-shaped building, right? Now, cars can't get in there if you do that, right? We don't want cars in there. So then what you do, you run the Eagle out there. Wouldn't it be cool if you're walking down the sidewalk and you see the studio and you see the radio person out right there in the window? And it would give whoever owns that building could add to the tax base. They could actually add to the tax base there. Then you get rid of all the parking there and you landscape that. You put in a water feature. You put in some tables and chairs for Gourmet to Go. Maybe you bring in another restaurant in there. And you just say, but that screws up all the regulations that require parking if you're going to build retail. What if the city provided the parking? What if the city said, you reface your strip malls, make them more bump out, make them more courtyardy, add landscaping, take out the asphalt, make it really a nice downtown, and we will take care of the parking. It's a public-private partnership. I think the city should provide the parking, and they invest in their buildings. But on the other hand, you're not going to say, you no longer have to have parking, and then they say, and we're not going to invest in our building either. See what I mean? It has to be both ways. So if Yvonne said, okay, I'm willing to do that. I'm even willing to be a private partner in developing the parking lot, because we are going to get some revenues from that, and I'll have my retail in the front and maybe a second story of office or whatever. If you do public-private partnerships like that, you're going to win. And you're going to get people willing to invest in downtown. So holistic, but then you start narrowing it down. So the number one priority, here's what you should do. I'm going to tell you right now what you should do. And this is my suggestion. Number one, you need to design the plaza. And you need to design a couple of parking structures. No more surface parking, a couple parking structures. They need to be bookend. You can't have them all at one end or the other. You need to have a couple locations. People will walk 2 blocks if it's worth it. And so that's what you need to do. So if you say, here's where we're going to put parking structures, here's what we're going to do for the plaza, we're going to program this plaza. This plaza is going to be alive at least 250 days a year worth of entertainment, activities. Ice skating could be 120 days right there, a splash pad another 100 days a year. All of a sudden, and then when you design your plaza, you actually do the design, the conceptual designs, the drawings like I showed yesterday. Yesterday I showed Old Strathcona, and I'd be willing to pull up any of these. We designed one there. We had 150 people in here yesterday. It was pretty much packed. And people were going, whoa, we get the visuals. Then what you do, and you do that this year, and I think the Landmark site is the site for the plaza, and I'd be happy to debate that with anybody, and, nicely. But then now what you do is you go to the property owners, one-on-one. You don't make them come to a meeting, you go to one-on-one. So Yvonne, I'd really like to sit down with you for an hour. We got some ideas. What do you think? And say, what would it take for you to reinvest and redo your building? And maybe let's move it out here, which means we basically be starting over. And then can we go up a second story and do some things there and everything? You have to have that conversation one-on-one. And here is what's in it for you. We're going to bring people downtown consistently at least 250 days a year because we're building this plaza. Here's the pictures of it. And we're going to put in the parking for you so you don't have to deal with the parking. Would you be willing to invest in your building? That is how you're going to remake downtown and make it an outstanding destination. So you start with a holistic approach and then you pick your projects. The very first one is the plaza.
So in terms of the value proposition to get people inside,
You can speak up.
question. In terms of value proposition for the people that you're trying to bring on side, just a quick question in your experience, what is the approximate timeline for a return on investment?
Okay.
You talk about many ways that there's a return on investment,
Yes.
tangible and intangible. And what's the timeline?
Yeah. So she asked about what is the time, once again, I'm repeating this for the cameras. What is the timeline for when we make an investment, when do we get our money back? I mean, where's the return on investment? We went out and researched 100 cities that did plazas that were programmed and monetized. That is the difference between the downtown Calgary. It's a dead space. It's not programmed or monetized. Same in Edmonton, they have plazas. Winston Churchill Square in Edmonton is one I'm familiar with, just a concrete jungle. But the ones that are programmed and monetized, the return on investment for a plaza is usually 3 years, where you see that start to really come back. So it usually takes about 3 years. The same with retail. It's, for instance, I'll give you a good example. I'm staying at the Best Western. It's been open 3 weeks. You know what? I bet you there's 20 rooms a night being rented there because people don't know it's there. It takes a hotel usually about 2 years before it gets to that break even until it starts seeing the ROI. And so in downtown, it's usually 3 to 5 years before you see that. So I do say it takes patient money. So somebody has to invest in a building, but the first thing is plaza. Bring people downtown consistently and retailers will follow. And by the way, when you go to property owners, so I said, so Yvonne, you know what? I don't know how much you're making right now in rent. I'm sorry, I'm using you, but we had a good conversation. So she goes, if I was to build this, when am I going to see my return on investment? When am I, right now I'm getting $1, and I don't know how much she's getting, but right now I'm getting $1 a square foot per year, $12 a square foot per year. I've heard that number banded around. If I invest in this building, I'm going to need to get $25. Will this do that? And will the retailers be willing to pay it because they're so busy? And the answer is yes. How long will it take? 3 to 5 years. And so it has to have patient money. But what you do is people come first, retail follows. So if we can show developers, property owners, that they're going to see a return on their investment because we're building this plaza, we're building these parking structures, then a lot of times they will take the chance. They will say, okay, based on that, we're going to do it. And I can give them case history after case history after case history of where it works. But that is what you have to do because you know what? Nobody is going to tear down or remodel or rechange their strip mall and not get any more rent than they're getting today. And people won't pay rent more than they're getting today because it's not hip and happening. And so that's what has to happen. That's why the plaza needs to be way up there at the top. And by the way, we have never seen a city that did a plaza that did not see a return on investment with its increased tax base. That's what's in it for the city is tax base. Downtown should be an economic driver, and I'll tell you right now, it's not. It's Costco and Walmart and all those big boxes that are being built out there. And that needs to change. Make sense? Yvonne.
I just wanted to say I really appreciated being able to talk to Roger. Initially, the response was, oh my God, I agree with you, but I've been dealing with the town and trying to redevelop and come up with a plan to beautify it. And as I said to Roger, we put $25,000 in landscaping in town, came in and did a beautification program on Main Street, tore it all up. So you're sitting back and saying, so what's the theme? What's the plan for this town before we start investing? Because at the end of the day, my banker is not going to finance me unless I can fill it with retailers or tenants that are going to pay the rent. So it's always this relationship. What I really appreciate about what Roger said yesterday, though, is I can start to see. We've got a gateway, we've got people coming, we get people to park, leave their cars behind, start walking. I can see how that can really start to work if we've got a plan. And I guess that's the thing that I just really wanted to say. It's a very exciting concept, but we have to put the plan out, have a commitment, and then the other part of it is that the town of Okotoks has to commit to prevent or to stop getting in the way. And I can say that from a strip mall owner, part of the reason that I'm intimidated by doing any development in this town is the horror stories I've heard of other people trying to get things moved forward. So that's the other part of it is a commitment on the town's perspective of saying we're not going to get in the way. And it's a partnership between the parties.
It has to be. It has to be a public-private partnership. We are in the age of public-private partnerships. And yes, absolutely right. And she's not the only person I heard that from, by the way. And now there's two sides of it. from merchants that say, well, the city comes here and they plow up the streets and they just dump all the snow in the parking spots and then nobody can park in the parking spots. And I said, well, you know what? Maybe you should clean out the parking spots, not just your sidewalks. It has to be a public-private partnership. We believe cities should monetize, the city should beautify curbside. Facade side should be merchants. It has to be, but it has to be a two-way street. So if you expect people like Yvonne to invest in their building, then the city needs to do its part, not to put up barriers and tear down what they're putting in and those kinds of things. And I'll give you a perfect example. We were working in Barrie, Ontario. It's about an hour north of Toronto. They have the GO train that runs up north and everything. And Barrie's downtown is about 6 blocks long. It's very much like yours. Even though their population is far bigger, it's 100,000 population, their downtown is very much like yours. And it's Dunlop Street. It's about 6 blocks long. And they said, you know, Roger, our problem is we're known for bars. That's all we're known for, bars. It's in the news all the time. There's bar fights, and people come from Toronto on Friday and Saturday nights. We're known for all these bars, and we have a bad reputation as this bar scene town. So I went up there, and we did an assessment like we did for you. I walked there downtown. I went up to them, and I said, I could only find 6 bars downtown. They said, well, that's all we have. I said, you know what your problem is? It's not that you have too many bars. You don't have enough of the other stuff. So I said, you've got like 7 restaurants downtown. I don't see any outdoor cafes and everything. And one of the restaurant owners says, well, the city doesn't allow outdoor cafes. City raised their hand and said, yes, we do. They said, well, have you ever tried to get one of those permits? And the city said, it's not that bad. So you know what I did? I went to City Hall the next day and I said, I am here as a restaurant owner and I want to do a sidewalk cafe. And so we went into the City Hall, we went to the planning department, and they said we had to go get a permit, we had to have professional drawings drawn up, we'd have to go to the fire department, the police department, if we're going to lose parking spaces to put it out in where parallel parking is, some of the examples I showed yesterday. It turned out it would have cost $15,000 and taken me 10 to 12 months to get a permit. And so I went to a city council meeting and I said, I'll tell you what, I want you to throw out all those regulations. I want you to make it a $250 permit. It could be hand-drawn on a napkin. They have to address storm drainage and certain things. Give them a little list. And you give them a permit in 2 weeks, and they did it. And within 1 year, they had 14 restaurants. They doubled the number of restaurants, and all met outdoor cafes. And all of a sudden, they're downtown in 1 year. Talk about return on investment. 1 year later, their downtown was known for its dining and shopping. Bars were second. So sometimes what we talk about with cities or towns is the fact that sometimes we get in our own way in helping people succeed. Does that make sense? So, yes. Here's a mic. So yeah, there you go. We're gonna. Well, it's for the camera. It's for the camera. That's what I said too. I don't need a mic.
I feel like I have 1,000 things to say. I have spent the 15 years previous to moving here in Canmore, so I watched the town go from a quaint little tear-me-down building downtown to currently what it is. And I watched the Grizzly Paw, where I worked and was friends with the owners, go through their problems with the town with parking and their signage, and like it was a disaster and took years to get a freaking sign outside. So I am sympathetic and manage a business downtown here that is open till 9 o'clock and has 40 people working in it that have nowhere to park. But I guess my question is, how would you tell the leaders of this town to suck it up politically? Because in the 3.5 years I've lived in this town, I see everybody like managing their reputation rather than taking risk and being a visionary leader. And I'm sorry to say that, it's not that I don't think there's good leadership in this town, I think that it's not, I'm worried that it's not forward enough thinking to accomplish half of this. And I would love to see this, like makes my eyes pop out of my head, but how do they get there politically?
Sometimes
and manage the part of this town that doesn't want to see growth and doesn't want to see that, you know?
And so that's a great question. And And you're right, because we worked in Canmore, and so we know that town really well, and now they're struggling with making sure that they don't end up having Banff happen to them with all the chains and everything in their downtown. And like I said, they've got a Subway, they've got a Rocky Mountain Soap, which is, there's only 6, and it is a Canadian. It's actually, that's their main store. And so it has those things, but it all started in Canmore. This is like a year and a half ago. We went out to Canmore and said, well, what's our focus? And our focus was really on good food and really super healthy living. Really, we called it the mountain sports capital. I mean, they're right there. But once you have that focus, it will help. So with cities or towns, and it takes strong leaders. You know, I've worked in towns where we've actually done executive sessions where we have all the whole council right there, and we'll say, if you want to make a difference, the chances are you're not going to get reelected, but you will set the future of this town for decades. And those are the people that win. Because we've worked in towns where, sure enough, where they went out there, and because there's always going to be people resistant to change, and you are really growing fast. And people are really afraid that you're going to be the next urban, Red Deer. You know what I mean? So they have that kind of that fear. Nothing against Red Deer, but, they struggle with their downtown. Or Calgary. And so what you do need is brave leaders. But you know what? That's why I'm here. I'm from the outside. You know what I say? I could say this to the mayor. I haven't said it to him yet. You say, you know what? I'm saying things that he might want to say but can't without paying a political price. That's why you have somebody from the outside. That's why I have no problem saying, you know what? Maybe we need to buy 2 homes, tear them down, put a parking garage in there. Maybe Yvonne's building is the right one to take out for parking. When it came to plazas, I said, boy, we got that gas station, not the one out at, what's that? The Hi-Ho. I said, maybe we take that out and we do a plaza there, somebody has to have those conversations. And so, what is it that I always say? I have a quote that I like, is that, and I could pull it up in a little bit here, but it talks about the fact that you'll never see statues of committees in public parks. You see brave leaders. And so is the council, is the mayor, whoever it is, are they willing to take some hits to make a difference? And by the way, I talked about displacing a lot of people in downtown. Well, why do we have to have a saw shop right smack in the middle of right next to what used to be a candy store, and next to a toy store we got a saw sharpening? I mean, it brings up like Freddy Krueger in the toy store, But on the other hand, you know what? We put a plaza in there. We need our skates sharpened and everything. Maybe there's a place for it, but maybe that's not the place. Maybe we just need to rearrange things. We certainly want Yvonne's tenants to be downtown because that's our lunch traffic. But can we rearrange them? And so, and this is why even branding, we say, should never be a public process. Because you know what? Your elected officials are elected to be all things to all people. Downtown's not about being all things to all people. That's why you need the business owners to step up and come to the city and say, this is what we want to do. But that's why I'm here, is to be that person to say, do this stuff. And I really don't want you to do an assessment. And this costs, what did this cost? What do you guys, where's Shane? $30,000. You spent $30,000. Don't let it go to waste. There's 60 suggestions in there. 40 of them are low-hanging fruit. And you know what? If you did 2 or 3 of them, like the plaza and stuff, you know what? Your return on investment is going to be outstanding. What I don't want you to do is waste that money. It doesn't make us feel good.
So how do you get the non-tourism or like shops and restaurant businesses downtown, or those kind of businesses, like the actual businesses, the TRM, the dentist, those kinds of things that maybe could be elsewhere? How do you get those people to
here's
shut their doors and become a restaurant that they just built last year?
Right. So let me answer that question. So in her question, once again, so we have it on camera, is how do you get the non-conforming businesses? Like if you build a plaza, having a dental office or TRM right there in a plaza doesn't make any economic sense. And you're absolutely right, it doesn't. So what do you do about those people? Because the dentist just put a lot of money in that building, and it used to be a restaurant, and we for sure want them. Let me tell you a story. I worked in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's actually Jackson Hole skier, but I'll call it Jackson Hole because that's where everybody knows it. We went to Jackson Hole, this is like in the early 80s, long time ago. And they decided that they wanted to be the home of Western art, the home of Western living. You know, the bronze sculptures, the cowboy and First Nations people, the sheepskin rugs, the pine pole furnishings, you know, all that kind of mountain art and feeling like you'd see up in Banff. And that's what their focus was going to be. And they had this little square in the middle of downtown called Washington Square. And our job was to change the business mix all the way around it. And it was a hodgepodge like you have. You know, they had like an H&R Block tax service, and a post office was in the wrong location, and it was just mishmash like you have. And so we made a list of all the property owners, and I went to them one-on-one. Some of them were in Los Angeles, some of them were in Bozeman, Montana. They were all over the place. And so I would go to them and say, you know what? We're going to become an arts community. When your lease expires with that laundromat, I don't want you to renew the lease. I want you to invest in your building so it would be suitable for a gallery, because we're going to be a fine arts destination, Western art. And I know you're getting, at the time, $1 a square foot, $12 a square foot a year for your space. I want you to lease it to them for $6. They said, hang on a second here. You want me to kick out my tenant who always pays his or her rent, put money in my building so I can rent it out at half price to some unproven mom and pop gallery? I said, exactly. 2/3 of them said, buy me out, you can do whatever you want. But 1/3 said, we see where you're going. We see what you're trying to do here, we'll play this game. And the reason for that $6, half price, would you go from here in Okotoks to Jackson Hole, Wyoming if there were 5 great galleries there? Would you? What if there were 50? See what I mean? Just like I showed yesterday, Argyle Street, the more you have of some, if you had 40 restaurants in downtown Okotoks, you'd have people coming here from Red Deer and Lethbridge and everywhere just to come there for all that dining. And so, but that 1/3 that played that game, pretty soon the person that owned their insurance agency downtown said, you know what? I could make more money renting this out to a restaurant and move my business upstairs or down the street. So, to make a long story short, it took patient money. And by the way, the reason for $6 a square foot, and then it went to 7, then 8, 9, 10, it took like 3 or 4 years. They were finally back to where they were started. They are now getting $85 to $100 a square foot at 100% occupancy with a waiting list. And if you want to buy any real estate in downtown Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you'll pay $1,000 a square foot. Incredible return on investment. Took 7 years. So, the dentist. TRM. Here's the problem. You always have to look at highest and best use. TRM gets no benefit of being on the plaza. They're a service business. And I don't even know what they do. But it should be a restaurant. The dentist's office, that's the wrong place for a dentist's office on a plaza. So what you do is you go to the dental people. First of all, you find a developer. By the way, in Jackson, Wyoming, we actually went to a developer and said, you know what? We want this to all be destination retail wrapping around that square. And would you build some space 2 blocks over that we could put the H&R Block, that we could put the dental practitioner, that we could do kind of what we call community-oriented retail in that space? And then, so what you would do here, this is what I would do. I would work with a developer that would build somewhere, you know, down where the movie theaters are, so it's not that far away from downtown, but down in that area, I don't know what's developable out there or down there, but somewhere where we could have a developer that would say, I want to build, would you build us a medical complex? It's not going to be a hospital, but we could have like dentists, the wheelchair rentals that are downtown, a pharmacy, and have all kind of medical practitioners because people will always be drawn to the rule of critical mass, just like Silicon Valley and high tech. So wouldn't it be cool if we could, would you be willing, if we could bring you the tenants, would you be willing to build that space? And if we bring you, this is what, see what I mean, public-private partnership. The city would actually be in the real estate business a little bit here. And then say, and if it says, yes, I will build 30,000 square feet of medical-oriented buildings with all Wi-Fi and all the things that you need in medical, kind of for dental and things like that. If you can bring my tenants. And like a mall, malls are never developed until they have 60% occupancy signed, pre-signed. Same thing. So then what you would do, then what Shane would do, I'm putting him on the spot, would now go to the dental office. And I would go to the people that own that building, and I think they probably own that building, right? I would go to them and say, you know what? We want to build your building. We want to put your building on the plaza. Not next to it, but your building, we're going to wrap the plaza right around you. Obviously, having a dental practice here that closes at 5 o'clock, or whatever, doesn't make any sense. We don't want you to sell your building. What if you could rent this out to a restaurant, and we have a developer building a new space over here that you could condominiumize it? See what I mean? So they might condominiumize it. They say, well, we don't want to rent, we want to condominiumize it. We want to buy our space over there. And you'd be with other dental or medical, and so it'd be kind of a clearinghouse. Would you be willing to do that? And by the way, your building, your dental building right now, will be the most valuable building in all of Okotoks, because that happens everywhere where people build plazas. You will have the most valuable building, and right now you might not make a whole bunch out of that restaurant being in there, but you know what? It's going to, over the next couple of years, it's going to be incredible. Matter of fact, we want you to take your front deck and we want you to wrap it around the side. And we want you to open up that side, because right now it's a big blank wall where the plaza would be. And I tell you, and you're going to have that plaza for, you know what? See, that's what I mean. Those are the kinds of deals you do. What we're doing is rearranging the furniture. Then we go down to there's a pharmacy downtown, and I went into it, and it's pretty weak as a pharmacy. And no offense to that, this is why I have somebody from the outside saying this. It's pretty weak. And really their focus is renting, crutches and wheelchairs and all those kinds of things. It's just the wrong use. So I say, you know what, would you be willing? We're going to put this order, we're going to have all kinds of medical people here together, and together they will do better. And so does that make sense? So that is how you do this. And by the way, all of Elizabeth Street down to McRae doesn't all have to be destination retail. We might say, the first couple blocks when you come in, where there's the gas station and the strip mall on the left. And by the way, if there's ever anybody to criticize, there's a clothing store right smack on the corner called Snowflakes. Have you read the sign in front of that store? This is private parking. You better not park here. It's all a whole bunch of threats. I just go, whoa, I wouldn't probably go in that store. I don't know who did that, if it's a strip mall owner or that store. And you could only have 60-minute time limit and all this stuff. Anyway, you'll have to read it and go, whoa. But maybe that end is more neighborhood retail. See what I mean? Maybe that is where we put the medical supplies, the dental practice. They may say, we want to be on Elizabeth Street. We don't want to be down by the theater. I don't think you need all of Elizabeth Street for that whole kilometer or however long it is. So maybe we start from McRae, kind of where the ice cream gallery is, and then we move it down to maybe where Sweetgrass is or somewhere. See what I mean? That section. And that's where we do our festival retail. And then the rest of it, you could have 2 zones, and that's where we're going to put, so we're just going to move people so they're not even off of Elizabeth Street. Sense? Yes?
I love everything that you're saying, and I'm a really big fan of changing this town. I've been a resident of this area for over 30 years. I have a business, and interestingly enough, yesterday when you showed the slide, the only thing that I saw was a CRI or CIR sign, which is the for sale sign. I'm not allowed to put up any more signage, which is a very, very difficult problem, but it's, you become, as the lady in the front row said, you begin to micromanage your business because you get tired of fighting the town. So I think the reason we have the businesses that maybe we shouldn't have in this area is because people come to this town to open a business and I hear it from other people that want to move here, whoa, your town is very difficult to deal with. It's a very, very, very difficult old boys club. And I think that we do need to shake it up, and I think that this town would rock amazingly. I own my retail space, and I would love it to be worth more than it is right now. Our bylaws have to change. I have been told by a politician in this town that our tax base is not the downtown, it is the big box stores. In other words, the message I got was, we don't really care about you. So I'm tired of it, but I'm not tired of my town. So I love what you say, and I so hope that together with the town and the residents and the business owners, we can make a difference.
And one thing, I will say is that sometimes the perception is not the reality. You know what I mean? And I'm not so sure that everybody at town hall shares that sentiment that you might have heard. I remember I've been here for a whole week, not even a week. And so I do believe things like blade signs, we talked about blade signs, those are perpendicular signs, and somebody said they're not allowed, somebody said they are allowed, nobody really knows, nobody knows what it takes to even get a permit for them, but you need them. So some bylaws do need change. It's what I said about Barrie, Ontario. We went to City Hall, in one meeting, we changed it all. We just got rid of all the layers and everything. However, I will say that they say the same thing in Canmore. It's very, very difficult. So there is one thing that's really important, is that you not sell your soul. That's what happened in Banff. They sold their soul. And now there's no character there. It's all chains. They call it factory tourism. Buses get off. They don't even look at the mountains. They get off. They walk up and down the main drag. They went and beautified. They spent tens of millions of dollars beautifying downtown Banff just a couple years ago. Made no difference. There's more vacancies in Banff than there is in Canmore. So there needs to be a balance. But on the other hand, when there isn't balance, you end up with Quonset huts overlooking the river. That's selling your soul. And of course, that was a long time ago. And so there are some things where you do that, but there does need to be a balance. And I think, you know what? You've got the mayors here. They're listening. That's why they're here.
So I'm hearing distance between the businesses and the town, the municipality, as stakeholders. And I'm neither camp. I've been here 17 years and I'm investing in one of those really long-winded lots over in Cimarron. But what I'm hearing is a lot of distance. I'm hearing a lot of ideas. I'm hearing a lot of discrepancies, like you mentioned. But I'm also hearing a common ambition that everybody wants what's best for this town. So I'm sure, have you seen this in other towns? And if so, after you leave, after you have presented all these wonderful ideas and everyone's excited, their eyeballs are popping out, who usually steps in to bridge those kind of gaps, or how is that managed over the long haul? Because this is not something that's quick. This is something that's long term. Who helps plod these different stakeholder groups through to the end, to fruition that you see in some of your slides?
Typically, it's your economic development office of the town. Shane and who all is it here? Stand up, Alexandra. Who all works with economic development downtown with the town? So here you've got
the plan. It takes a village, right? It's an entire community. It's not only the town, but it's the private sector as well.
But economic development, working with the planning department, everything should do that. What happens is sometimes cities and towns, councils get in the way. I speak at municipal leagues all the time. A council's job is to set policy, not manage the day-to-day affairs of the town. They're to set policy. And they may say, our policy in downtown is we want it to be we want it to be revitalized. We want you as a city, this is the council, if I was speaking for the council. We want city staff to make downtown a focus so that its tax base is on a per square foot value of that over there, Costco and Walmart. See what I mean? And so they could set a policy like that, a direction, and then your CAO, your economic development, your planning department needs to implement that. Many times when we do these, we do a thing called branding, development, and marketing action plans. And when we do those, we usually say we want one person dedicated to implementing. So you could say for the next year, the town could say, for the next year, I want somebody on town staff to take these 60 suggestions, figure out which ones should be recommendations, and make them happen. And be that liaison between, so what we did in Barrie, Ontario is we got one person on city staff to be the liaison between business and city. And that's a full-time job. And that's what they are. They are to help the Yvonnes, help anybody that has a business downtown, and be that liaison to make it happen. Because it always is going to be, there is going to be some negotiation. I mean, well, what do we give and what do we get in return on both sides? And you need to have somebody dedicated to that. You know, and I think you have that. I mean, you know what? I've taken shots at the town, while I'm here. I took shots at Shane, who's the one who contracted us to come here. You know, I ridiculed your wayfinding sign. He came up to me afterwards and said, you know, Roger, I did all those signs. But you know what? You know what's good? You know what I really like about Okotoks? Everything that I've said is meant to be constructive, not to rip people. That's why I've always put suggestions, what you do make better. If you come in and just say you're doing this wrong, I mean, all you do is beat people up. But even Shane says, you know, Roger, you're right. We need to redo our wayfinding signs. That's cool. That's cool when you have the guts to do that. I think this city wants to do the right thing. What happens is, and sorry if I call it city because you're that size. I like the fact that you're town, by the way. I agree with your people that it just feels good. But what happens is sometimes they feel like, and I know the IRS because I'm from the States. We feel like the IRS that everybody's coming at us. So what happens a lot of times with town officials and people, well, I want blade signs, and you didn't do a good job cleaning that up, and Roger showed that parking lot there, and by the way, the parking lot that I said, you know, the town needs to do its part is actually privately owned. See what I mean? And so sometimes what happens is they get defensive because they're getting so beat up. And that's why you need that person to be in between. Okay, look, let me do this. Even like wayfinding, you know what? Are we going to have to get the province involved in wayfinding because that is a provincial highway really running through the middle of town, you know? And so that's why you need that person there. And so I think this town wants to do the right thing. Everybody I've met in this town really does have the core values of this town at heart. You know, I think the big danger in this town is getting too big. I mean, I was surprised to see you had a Costco here when you're this close to Calgary. I'm glad you have it because it keeps local spending. And matter of fact, it'll get High River here and everybody else. That's cool. But on the other hand, where do we grow too big? Where do we start to lose our, soul? And so I see them being a little bit protective. But I think there should be a focus on downtown. Everything that I've talked about yesterday and today is trying to do three things. Bring more money to the city. That's tax base. And why do we want to bring more money to the city? So they make the quality of life even better. Your pathways, your parks. I mean, those things that make quality of life. That is what your council's here for. They're here for quality of life. Number two is to make your businesses more successful. And we're talking about the ma and pa businesses that are the heart and soul of Okotoks, no chains. And then number three is to improve that quality of life. The plaza area, that's about you as locals. It's not tourism. That plaza is the best thing you could do to ever. It's the best return on investment in anything you can invest here. So it's quality of life, more money to the city, and more money to the local businesses. That's what this is about. This is about cash. Make sense? Yes.
Speaking about cash, yesterday you talked a little bit about the plaza and how a certain portion can be public and some of it's going to be privately funded. Recommendations for those fundraising opportunities, because I think that's going to be key for us actually getting that plaza.
Yes. So let me talk about the plaza, okay? For you that weren't here yesterday, this is the landmark site. There's our dental building. And so yesterday I showed this, and so I will show this slide. We believe that your plaza should be this big. It should close off this. I already heard this morning, you know what, Public Works or somebody in town, somebody at the city is going to have a real problem with closing off that street. You do it anyway. And I don't mind if you need me to be the heavy, because here's the point. We're not closing off this alley. This is underground parking for this apartments right here. I think this is right. And so we're not going to close that. You have emergency access through here. We still have parking back here. It's not that difficult to drive around here, and to get in here. I mean, and excuse me, Elma's right back here. And Elma pretty much is kind of a dead end. This makes this all a nice cul-de-sac development back in here. And so, but there's always going to be somebody that says, well, I don't think we should close out that street. By the way, here's some other things you could do. You could even do, you know, and I showed a couple of drawings. Let me show you this. Number one, let me keep going here. You should go right over there to the toy store. We should get rid of these parking spots right here to widen this out so it is an extension of Old Town Plaza right into this plaza. So it becomes one and one. So this right here would be, all these would be gone. Remember, the city, and this is parking structures. The plaza would go right here, so that little alleyway is still here. It's still open for emergency access. But you know what? If this was plaza area right here, you could even have pop-up bollards right there and right here. You know what bollards are? Those round posts that come up like this high. So that if you need emergency access, those things can pop down in the ground and somebody could still drive through here. Because this area would be all pavers. It's not going to be a street or anything anymore. But you know, that's where you'd put vendors and stuff. So it'd be kind of open space. See, so, you know, there's going to be people that say, well, we can never close out the street. The hell you can't. I mean, you know, and so sometimes, you know, it takes somebody from the outside to do that. And this is the one I showed yesterday for you that didn't see it, but I wanted to pop it up here again. It was taking this lot, and by the way, just by doing the plaza, the people that own this building, this building, this building, and this building have already committed to tearing all these down, building new buildings right here on the edge of the plaza, get rid of all the parking and go behind it. Same thing we're trying to get to you to do. And they're already committed, and they would have the access to the plaza for all their guests. And it's going to be retail on the first floor, hotel on upper floors, and so all that's going to move. And this is downtown. This is right across the street from it. Great, great area. And so that is going to turn into this. They're already working on it. Now, this is where your street would be. See what I mean? If we were to plop this where you are, if this was the dental building, let's make this the dental building right here, and let's say we even put a stage on that side. I think what they should do is put windows and doors on this side and actually have outdoor dining here and put the stage over here. And I'll show you that in a second. But you see this right here. This is about, and this plaza, by the way, is about a third larger than your site, if we include the street right over to the toy store. This sinks down about, 3 or 4 steps. These are all flush-mounted fountains, the splash pad, all flush-mounted. So you can shut off these fountains and put it all full of chairs and watch a stage production. Or you could have easels all in that amphitheater for an art show, an art exhibition, ice carvers, you name it. And then during the winter, these steps, this all becomes filled, and it's an ice skating rink. That's about 10,000 square feet. And then this is where you put food trucks, vendors, and by the way, I don't think you even allow food trucks. You got to change that too. I mean, that's a huge, and what you do, you say, well, we don't want a food truck that's going to compete with our existing ice cream gallery, but gee, we have some gaps we could fill. Because remember, we always want to make, and by the way, even if you start bringing in food trucks, you know what your goal is? To have them actually open up retail spaces so that we can get you to 25 or 30 restaurants downtown. And so all this would be open vendor space. And so doing the plaza, what has to happen is, number one, you need to have a drop-down screen. That's probably, sorry, speaking feet and inches, 20 or 30 feet wide. So that you can do movies on the square every Monday night. Wouldn't that be cool in the summer? You need to have a permanent sound system. You need to have a covered stage area because you know what? You do get some, even yesterday it sprinkled a little bit. And so you do get winners here. I mean, if you want, you should see what we did. We just designed the entire waterfront for the city of North Vancouver. You know how much their plaza is costing? $35 million. And they're going to pave it. And by the way, it's going to be covered. 20,000 square foot covering. You know, tent, white, we call it a tensile structure. Huge, like 16 feet from the ground to it, so you still see wide open views of Vancouver from North Vancouver. It's going to be incredible. Doing that splash pad there is $500,000. But you know what? If that splash pad ran here 90 days of the year, let's say June, middle of July, August, September, you could probably run it clear up until the beginning of November. You know what? That's 90 days of activities downtown. And you know who's going to be down there? The families with their kids. You know that ice cream shop is going to be doing a heck of a lot more business. And so will Heartland Cafe, and so will TRM when it moves out and that becomes a restaurant.
Hear that, Dave?
But
You get TRM.
I know. And I didn't know he's here. But here's the point. I'm glad he's here. Because you know what? I want him to make a ton of money off that building and maybe move upstairs. And, you know, by the way, there is a retail shop in there. The clothing store there and everything. So but I'm just saying the highest and best use, you know, on a plaza needs to be open. It needs to be, that's where you get the most money per square foot. A restaurant would pay a fortune to be in there because you know what? The busiest restaurant downtown is Heartland Cafe. I mean, I've been there, I ate there twice for lunch, and every day it was packed because it's on the square. Even you know, there's some shrubs outside the cafe. Those shrubs need to be cut down to the level of the fence so that when you develop your plaza, they look into the plaza. Right now, they're separated from the plaza. They need to be in the plaza. So the shrubs that are right there need to just be cut down to the fence level so that, not right now, but when you start activating that, Old Town Plaza, you start programming it, that when they're sitting there on that deck, they can look out there and see entertainment on the stage, that they're part of the plaza. They're part of the entertainment. They're part of it. And those are the things you have to do. So for TRM, I want them to keep the building, and I want them to say, man, we'll just go build another building. Or we could go find another. Do you own the building? Does TRM own the building? And you may say, you know what, we agree, because we think we could probably get twice as much money per square foot if we had a restaurant here. We're going to do another location. I don't want them to sell it. I want them to make a fortune off of it. But once again, it's highest and best use. The highest and best use of plaza areas is dining, retail, and lodging. And he'll make way more money per square foot. And by the way, I wouldn't do it right now. Right now, Old Town Plaza is basically a park. It's not activated very often. A restaurant, if you put a restaurant in TRM's building today, it would probably survive. It would probably do well because it's a nice atmosphere. But you put a plaza there that's programmed and there's 250 days worth of people there, all of a sudden he's going to go, okay, now, see this may make sense. Because you know what? We want TRM downtown. How many people work in the building, roughly? And you know what? They're eating right next to it. See, we want those enough. We want those. I don't care whether it's 5 people or 10 people. It's still your lunch traffic. It's still business downtown. And so we don't want anybody to leave downtown. We're just trying to say, how can we rearrange it and make it work? And how could we give him a better return on investment if he moved upstairs or over somewhere? Does this make sense? It's just economics. So our deal is not to chase them away at all, or Yvonne or anybody else. So I hope that makes sense. Doing this, I think that you should invest. I think to do your plaza downtown will be right around the $5 million mark. And yesterday, there's people going, oh my gosh, Roger, why'd you have to even bring up those numbers? I mean, that's going to scare the living daylights out of a lot of people. That's a lot of money. Let me give you an example. There is nothing on this planet that you could do for less money that will create a better return on investment. You want to build, first of all, you had an idea to do a performing arts center with 300 seats. Never will work. You cannot get the Natalie McMasters, the Tim McGraw. You need at least 1,200 seats. If you want any kind of good name entertainment, you need to have 1,200 seats. That's the minimum for performing arts. And we'd spend a ton of time doing performing arts. Matter of fact, I started my career in the concert industry. And so, 1,200 seats. You know what that would cost to build? The average performing arts center with 1,200 seats is $40 million. I think you need one. We can debate where it should go. But the point is, for $5 million, there is nothing you could do that would bring more people downtown on a consistent basis than anything else you could ever do as a city. You know what? Think about how much money you're spending on ball fields and how often of the year they're used. I mean, this is in the heart of your downtown. It all of a sudden makes TRM's building worth 3 times more than it is today. The dentist building's worth 3 times more. The one right next door that's for sale would be worth a fortune. I mean, that little row of houses that I really like that we talked about yesterday would be worth the fortune. I mean, all of a sudden downtown, the tax base is going to double or triple. And the property owners are going, oh my gosh, you just talked about tax base doubling or tripling. That means my taxes are going to double or triple. But you know what? You're going to have tenants that are willing to pay 3 times the rent because they have so many more people there. See what I mean? This is all economics. Yes.
Hi. So just a quick question on the plaza. The key, I think, is programming. Would you agree?
No
Because
question.
You can't just build a plaza. People are not going to come, even if it's beautiful, it's just beautification. People are not going to come if it's a big empty space. So the
Absolutely.
programming, what is the cost of the annual cost of programming that you see in a plaza this size if you're wanting activity there 250 days
So-
a year?
This is one we did in Topeka, Kansas. You know what? Yesterday I talked about Rapid City, South Dakota. Rapid City, South Dakota has Main Street squares. As a matter of fact, let me just show it here really quick. I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm going to throw out another number, and you're going to go, oh my gosh. Let's see. Is it right here? Ovation, Rapid City, Main Street Square. Okay. So. And let me skip through a bunch of these slides. And this was a 60-space parking lot, and it is now gone. That's where the plaza is. We did not have them make up the 60 spaces. They did add a third story on this parking garage. You see 1, 2, but the bottom floor right here has restaurants. It has a Zamboni parked in there. They keep their ice chiller in there. It's got restaurants in there. So they added the third floor. They did not still make up the 60 spaces. This Sears building was a derelict building that had pigeons growing in it. Water was coming through the flat roof and everything. A guy came and bought it and refurbished it. And this is before, and this is, of course, what we wanted them to build. Notice 3 stories, restaurants, everything. The Sears building is gone. And I showed this, and here's what they did. And so I'll show you. There we go. There it is before. There it is after. There's the plaza. You can see the stage right here. Let's see if I have pictures of the stage. This is that Sears building. This is all full of restaurants now. There's like 7 restaurants in there. There's retail shops and restaurants. I just made a recommendation to them last summer that they actually build a deck out here overhanging, overlooking the plaza and put more restaurants upstairs. Wouldn't that be cool? And so there it is. All of these little light things build up. Here's the stage. Notice it's got permanent lighting. It's got permanent stage. And by the way, they get a lot of snow in the winter. They're similar to you in many regards. They built these whole things that I thought were ugly. They did it because Mount Rushmore's nearby and they're granite. But they spent a couple $1 million on that. Their splash pad, and by the way, events and everything, this is their splash pad. It's way too small. They even said, I wish our splash pad was... Let me get to a better picture. This is all Main Street Square. By the way, their downtown had 30% vacancies. Let me get to, this is what they said. This is how they paid for it. And I'm going to come back to this. I wanted to show you a picture. There it is, $500,000 a year. That's what it cost to program it. So they're saying, boy, I wish we would have made this whole thing a splash pad. It's about 8,000 square feet. We wish we would have done that. It would have cost us more. By the way, they're now building extensions on their stage. Their stage was too small. And so for you wouldn't make all these mistakes. And there it is in the winter. And it's real ice. And so, $500,000 a year. The city pays $50,000 of that. The other $450,000 comes from vendor rentals. Vendor booths that are there. If a car show comes into town, they might put in a beer garden. And they created an organization called Destination Rapid City. And the city pays $50,000 a year for the plaza. That's its subsidy. And by the way, in 3 years, the tax base around the plaza, within 4 blocks around the plaza, doubled. $50,000. The city's seeing $250,000 a year in increased taxes. So it's given, 20% of that, 25% of that back. The other $450,000, here's where it comes from. They make $130,000 a year just renting ice skates. Just renting ice skates. They make $250,000 a year from vendor booths. They get like 10% of their gross sales. So they don't do it, charge it by the booth. They just get a percentage. So if you do well as a vendor, great. We get a percentage of that. And then they make some other money from sponsorships. Band is sponsored by such and such business. And by the way, their sponsors might be Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Budweiser if it's on occasion, or it could be a local business. They have all kinds of sponsors. It is busy almost 300 days a year. But their ice skating rink is out there 120 days a year all by itself. So it doesn't have to be festivals and events. It just needs to be activities. So that 120 days a year that ice skating there, that's 120 activity days that there's people downtown. And then if you had 90 days of splash pad, well, you know what? You're already at 200 days and you have people downtown. And then they bring in street vendors, car shows. You know, when they built the plaza, all of a sudden quilt guilds, everybody started saying, we want to hold an event in downtown Rapid City. Nobody said that before. 0% vacancies in their downtown now. And merchants are paying twice as much for rent now than they did 3 years ago, but they're making 10 times the money. There's no reason why that can't work for you.
Yeah, I just think that the significance of that can't be overlooked. Like
It cannot be.
if this goes ahead, that is such a key component because there are plazas all over North America that are empty, and we don't have to look far. They're in Calgary, they're on 8th Avenue, they're in Eau Claire. They have splash pads and they do have skating. So it has to be surrounded by events or vendors or whatever, restaurants or whatever that's going to be complementing and supporting that. Otherwise, it's a big empty space, a very expensive big empty space.
You know what I said
It has to
yesterday?
be done well.
For you that were here yesterday, you know what I said? Old Town Plaza is not even really a plaza. It's just a pretty park that every once in a while we hold some events in. Plazas do not work unless they're programmed and monetized, period. So building a plaza means nothing. Matter of fact, here's what would happen. Out of that $500,000, you know why it costs $500,000? Because that includes 3 full-time staff that just do your plaza. Here's what one person spends full-time recruiting events and vendors to hold public events there. Like dog shows, cat shows, quilt guilds, pottery guilds, art guilds, biking organizations, they come in there. That one person spends full time recruiting outside organizations. Wouldn't it be cool if you sent out a letter to every biking club, hiking club, quilt guild, pottery guild in the whole Calgary area? A couple million people in this whole area, and you invite them to host their public events in downtown Okotoks. All you're doing is inviting them. You have one person, that's what they're doing. Making downtown a hub of activity year-round. Another person does all the logistics. Do we need to close off a street? Do we need to bring in porta potties temporarily, because it's such a big event? Of course, we think that part of your plaza, your $5 million, includes public washrooms, by the way, because that's really important. They can't just be open when the gallery's open. And so one person does logistics, and then one person manages the facility. Maintenance, maintaining it, using the Zamboni to clean to shave the ice, all of that kind of stuff. And that's part of where that $500,000 goes. And so, yes, you have to have a staff dedicated. You can't just say, Parks Department, go ahead and do this. By the way, your people that are programming, they would also program. We say Old Town Plaza is part of this plaza. It's all one plaza. But they would also program the one right in front of Town Hall. The little sunken area, that's a good activity space for something, even if it's just street musicians, or a little ice cream cart out there in the summer months. Something that monetizes it. And so you might have these things all over downtown. I'd love to see Okotoks hold a jazz festival where you have people down at the town hall, you have people at Old Town Plaza, you have people over in this new plaza, you have somebody in front of one of the strip malls. You take the cars out of there and you make it an activity space. Wouldn't that be cool? Those are the kinds of things that you could do. But you're absolutely right. Building a plaza and not monetizing it or programming it does not do anything. You know what? One of the reasons why I think you have the chairs bolted down in Old Town Plaza is because you're afraid people will get vandalized. And things don't get vandalized when it's full of people all the time. I was making a joke yesterday. We were walking over there, and I said, I almost went over to Home Depot and was going to buy a crescent wrench or a socket, and I was actually have my wife take pictures of me unbolting the chairs, just as a joke. And we didn't do it, but because I'd probably still be in jail. But you're absolutely right. Has to be programmed, has to be monitored. Now, I want to talk about this location really quick. Because some people are going to say, well, Roger, we're not so sure about whether this is really the right location. You know what I want to do is, by the way, there you go. Plaza's the soul. It's the central gathering place. You know what? We're in an age of social media, but you know what? Human interaction is more important than it's ever been. And if you want people in their 20s, 30s, and young 40s to be here, you need to give them places to come after work and after dinner on weekends. It's the central gathering place. That's what you need to have. I mean, this is the soul of a community. But if I can't find where I did the drawings at. Let's see, were they down here? Here we go. Let me just, I don't know where I had that. Let's see. Yeah, I was going to do this old Strathcona one there, and I'll just even leave it right there. But, so I think it's going to be about $5 million. I think that sometimes there are grant funds for it. I think sometimes there are redevelopment funds for it. Sometimes this was a couple $2 million of this was philanthropy, or the one in Rapid City. I think it's a huge priority. I don't know how much you're spending on parks, but I'll bet you $5 million is not that much. I'm sure it's freaking people out, but remember, this is an investment. Parks are all about quality of life. This is actually an investment. And if it doubled, I don't know what your tax base is along Elizabeth Street. I'm not even talking about Elma Street. But wouldn't it be cool that if in 3 years you could double that tax base? That would way more than offset the debt service on that. About locations. We looked all over your downtown along Elizabeth and Elma and even Railway and couldn't find a better location. Here's the challenge you have. Let's say we're to take out was it Hi-Ho? Is that what the gas station is? Let's say we're going to take that out. Because, first of all, here's what you do. Number one, you have to buy private property. Number two, you got to tear it down. Number three, you got to remediate the site, which could take years. By the time you get ready to build a plaza, you've already spent more than $5 million. I mean, this just makes sense. Plus, this takes an existing plaza you already own and turns it into a real plaza rather than just a park. And so that's why this is the site that if you're going to do a plaza anywhere in town. I looked at Yvonne's place, and I thought maybe we should put the plaza there. It's right across the street from those neat little houses. It's really centrally located. Maybe that's where the plaza should go. And I went, but what are we going to do about Old Town, Old Town Plaza? It really needs to be there. The city already owns it. Because you know what? She's not going to say, oh, sure, you could have it. I'm sure there are days when she would say that. But the point is, you know what I mean? You already own it. You already own the street. You already own that land. It just makes sense. It's ready to go. And so, the layout of it, and I did this after this let's see, I think it was after the old Strathcona one, somewhere I thought I did a little drawing. Maybe it was after the Topeka one. There we go. In this one here, what I thought is, man, here's the dental building. By the way, the dental building's not coming out. We're just wrapping the plaza around it. Same with the toy store. We're not taking this building out. It's just sitting on the plaza. See what I mean? So we wrap the paver stones around there. And so in this case, if you did this stage here is 20 feet by 50 feet wide. You could do Shakespeare productions. You could do orchestras on there. It's big enough to do that kind of entertainment. Because one thing that's lacking in downtown is cultural depth. And so, and you have the culture here. It's just good luck finding it. And so then this here is bigger than the one in Rapid City. This here, it's about the same as Rapid City. This is about 8,000 square feet. And you know what? All this is open vendor space. So if you need emergency access, you still have this. This is all paver stones. You'd have planters and everything, and all this whole thing is a plaza. How cool is that? You'd have people coming from everywhere. And 250 days a year minimum, there's going to be activities on that plaza. How cool is that? I mean, that's just my rough pencil 2-minute drawing there. And by the way, the reason you have a stage here, the sun goes this way. You always want the sun in the performers. You never want the sun. You could never put the stage over here because then you'd have the sun would be in the spectators' eyes when they're looking towards the band. See what I mean? There's all this stuff that goes into plaza design. And so, but it would have sound, it would have lighting, it would have ice, it would have water. That's why plazas cost $5 million. And just remember, the one in North Vancouver is going to be $35 million. By the way, the ice rink in that is regulation hockey, 17,000 square feet. So it's much bigger, but it's also a much bigger city. By the way, their population in North Vancouver is only 50,000. But they got the sea bus that runs across. Wouldn't it be cool if the people in Canada Place, you know where I'm talking about if you know North Vancouver? Wouldn't it be cool if people in Canada Place looked across the way and went, oh my gosh, what's that over there? All of a sudden that sea bus is full of visitors. Once again, it's an investment. Questions? Yes?
What's the population of Rapid City?
Yeah, the population of Rapid City is 60,000. So it is 3 times bigger than you, roughly, twice as big. But let me give you one more statistic about Rapid City. The population within 150 miles, not kilometers, is 200,000. You go, 25 clicks or 30, and all of a sudden you're in 1 million people. And so even though those are David, and by the way, this is about you first, not Calgary. This is about you. And so Rapid City is that. And what's really cool about Rapid City, they do Monday nights, movies on the square Monday night. The average attendance is 3,500 every Monday night during the summer. They have similar weather to you. They're a little more temperate in the winter, but they do have a lot of snow. They're not quite as cold as you. So they have same kind of issues as you. Very similar weather. That's why I wanted to use them as an example. Old Strathcona, they're in Edmonton. And theirs is going to be uncovered. And by the way, the population of Old Strathcona is about 70,000, and that includes University of Alberta, which is kind of one end. That's the White Ave area. And so that is their population there, and that's what they're trying to do, is serve that 70,000. So if you said, well, gee, we want our plaza to service Okotoks, maybe High River, and kind of draw kind of that circle that go out maybe 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers, something like that, you're probably getting close. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
The area east of the art gallery along the railway track is empty.
Yes.
There could be 2 possibilities there. Certainly parking, building parking structures makes sense because, nobody really wants to be on a railway track. And we do have a lot of rail traffic there, so that's one. Is that too far away from the downtown? The other part of my question is that a feasible place to put something like an art center? Because it's long, it's sort of long, but it's not very wide.
Yes. We even thought public market. I had an idea yesterday of putting a public market like in front of one of the strip malls and make it a plaza, but a public market back there would be really great. We did see that. This right here this is railway is right here, I think, or it says Daggett Street. Daggett. So, but these are 2 homes. Here's the plaza area right here. And there's 2 homes where I'm going to put parking here. And I did have other pictures of parking. There's Yvonne's building.
Yeah, like even east of there,
it's a different.
Oh, when you get, I saw, when you get east of there, it starts getting industrial. I don't see going much further east. I really didn't see that. I really felt that you should, if anything, you went probably west to kind of fill that in. So you're more in the central core area. When we were doing this, there's Yvonne's building. See how I conveniently erased it? Let's see. I was going to try to find. This is down that way, but this is facing west, if I remember right. And this is when we get, I think these are more west.
So right there, Roger, parking along there,
if we can get CP to agree to let us use the right of way, every space we take off the ground downtown for, for a plaza, for putting parking along here would offset it. It's in behind, it's not being utilized right now.
Please put parking there.
Please put parking there.
Thanks.
I love the sound.
Well, for me, it seemed kind of strange for me that you have this parking here, but you don't allow it down further. I don't know why.
And if right that spot that you just had, that picture,
Yeah.
the building, that's the salon and spa that I own. I have 40 employees.
Okay.
That work in that building.
And like 75 guests a day. We're open 12 hours a day, and we have like 8 parking spots.
Yeah. Well, this is why we believe the town needs to build parking structures. So, but I was, and so I don't think anybody's suggesting taking away that parking.
No, but we're talking about right there.
Yeah, but even right here, do you think that should be added, additional parking? Absolutely. We couldn't figure out why you can park. Why is it that you can park right here next to the railroad track, but you can't park right here next to the railroad track? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, now I understand working with, okay, and I do understand that railways have right-of-ways. There are right-of-ways, they probably own that. And I know what it's like working with railways to give up their right-of-way. And it could be that there's more distance between here and the rail track than there is here. So I do understand those deals. But that, once again, I mean, a lot of times they're more complicated than they seem.
Well, you've heard that CP Rail came to Alberta just before God.
Okay. I have heard that quote before.
Yes. So the town of Okotoks has a landscaping lease along there.
Okay.
And many of our roads are within the CPR right of way. So we can try and work with the new generation of decision makers to see if we can expand the parking there. But historically, they've been very resistant.
So why do they allow it on the other side?
It's the same.
See, these are set back further. Notice these cars come out to about here.
That's right. It's setback issues from the.
It's the distance between a rail car and the front of a bumper. And they do have to have that. And they need to have overhang and all that. So we do get that. But I even sat there and thought, well, what if this was one way and you park cars right here? And then I thought, I hate one-way streets because it makes it confusing for people. But I do think that this is worth studying. But at the end of the day, if you could work with them, that would be great. But I do understand how difficult that is. But at the end of the day, doing something like this. So my deal is, well, what if, Yvonne, now this building here is pretty deep that she has right here. And these are gone now. This is that empty lot. And I thought, well, what if she could build a building that was like, what if this whole thing was a parking structure, but the front of it, this much of it, so it wouldn't be as deep as this building, but what if the front of this was all retail on the first floor, the second floor was offices overlooking, and then all this was parking behind it and on the second floor, and then the whole third floor was parking. And they make these, and so it looks like retail, it doesn't look like a parking garage. That right there would hold almost 200 cars. Even with the retail. I mean, God, you know how many parking spaces that is downtown? Do you know how many parking spaces you have in front of your building now? 20?
28 total.
28, 30. See what I mean? We just solved her problem, and we're creating space for other merchants to do the same thing. So I do believe that this is the age you need to actually have structures rather than just surface parking. And you know what's really cool about this is you're still helping pay for the parking garage because you have retail spaces in there and office spaces. It helps fund it. And by the way, parking does not have to be free. Matter of fact, I think you would charge it. I think it's $1 an hour up to 3 hours, and after that it's free. It gives independent. So people say, well, I'm going to be downtown for 3 hours. Heck, I might as well stay for 4 or 5 or 6 because you know what? It's free now. How cool is that? That's the best model. Here's the deal with parking and charging for parking. It needs to be worth it. Is it worth paying $3 to park in downtown Okotoks? Yeah, absolutely. The second you have a plaza there, that was my other concern and why I did this other drawing over here was because if you develop this into a plaza, more of a plaza, I mean, right now when you hold events here, this probably only holds like 150, 200 people. Well, what happens when all of a sudden you can hold 3,500 for movies on the square? So here's another idea. A cool idea you could do, and they did this in Walnut Creek, California, and they're going to do it in Rapid City, is actually have a trolley, and you know the old trolleys that you'd see, cable car trolleys like you see in San Francisco? You know, they run on a track. These trolleys are not on a track. They actually take those trolleys, they put rubber tires on them, they put little natural gas engines or electric vehicles on them, and what if you had parking down further, down towards where the movie theater is, the bowling alley? What if you had parking down there, and every 10 minutes during events from Siemens Stadium, 15 minutes, every 15 minutes from Siemens Stadium, you had a little trolley, maybe 2 of them going back and forth, that would shuttle people into downtown. Because when there's nothing going on at Siemens Stadium, you've got acres and acres and acres of parking with not one single car on it. Wouldn't that be cool? And you have this little trolley. Here's the deal with if you do a trolley. Now, we're talking down the road, but we're also talking about making sure we don't crowd out our employee parking and our merchant parking downtown. So that when you have events on the square, movie nights, Mondays, that trolley, it runs every 15 minutes. So you're not putting in tracks or anything. And by the way, you can buy these trolleys for $35,000. They're restored trolleys, have the old wood seats. Because the last thing people want to do is get on a school bus. It has to be part of the experience. And so go to Siemens Stadium and catch the trolley downtown. The trick is with trolley, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be every 15 minutes or less. If it's more than 15 minutes, studies show that people would just drive because convenience rules the day, particularly in Alberta. It has to be free. Yeah, it needs to be free. And so what you do is you're running it between downtown. And by the way, trolleys can be self-funding by putting advertisers on board. On board, they always have these panels up above. You could have brochure distribution in there. And so it is self-funding. So it can be self-funding. And by the way, even for drivers, you have to have licensed drivers that can take multiple passengers and everything. You're school bus drivers. You're doing this on weekends. You're doing it when it's in the summer. You're doing it, see what I mean? So you already have the drivers. So they get paid a little bit to run people back and forth, and you have a couple of them going. And so you do this when you have major sporting events and stuff. I'm just trying to show you how you could help solve some of these issues. But we know when you build a plaza, we got to address the parking. You can't build a plaza, program it, and then just expect good luck finding parking. So this is just another way to maybe address that. Yes, in the back. It's on.
Well, I have a couple comments. And one thing, we're always talking about vehicles. We haven't looked at walking. We haven't looked at bicycling. We haven't looked at skateboarding. We haven't looked at scooters. Yep. Access to downtown is very poor. First of all, there's a signal lane bridge. You're not allowed to ride your bike across. You can't take a buggy. You can't take a wheelchair. You have stairs on the other end there. So to me, if you can improve some of the access to downtown, yes, it makes it more feasible. But if you don't improve that, then you're just talking about parking again. Right. We've got to. And remember, everywhere in town is within 3 kilometers of downtown.
Right. So I'll give you a good example. We're staying at the Best Western. Yesterday, my wife, Jane, that's here with me, she said, I'm going to go for a walk. So she walked down over the bridge, over the river, came down to about where the Shell station is. You know what I'm talking about, right across the street from Siemens Stadium. And she goes, I was going to walk into downtown, but it just kind of faded away. It's no longer pedestrian access. You're absolutely right. And I said this yesterday, you need to have 40 bike racks downtown. That is the future. People want out of their cars in a pedestrian experience. But creating those linkages, even from Cimarron into downtown, are kind of non-existent. And so somehow, even though there's pathways and stuff, even your pathway system, not all connected. I think it's awesome. We love it. But it's not quite all connected. But you're absolutely right, given access, so there's alternative ways to come downtown would be great. Because for her, she just said, I said, so why didn't you just keep walking downtown? She goes, well, once I got to the Shell station, sidewalks disappeared. It was kind of industrial. And so she goes, I just turned around and came back. You're right, linkages weren't there. Wouldn't it be cool? We've even actually worked with hotels, Best Westerns, as a matter of fact, that will have bicycles that guests can take for free. Wouldn't that be the coolest thing ever? Because, one cool thing about the Best Western, it's down at a lower elevation. It's not like is it the Landmark, Landview? No, what is Lakeview Hotel, which is on the hill. Getting back to it you have to go up the hill. But the Best Western's fairly flat. It's easy. It's fairly walk. You got to go up and over the bridge, but there's an up and down to that. And so doing things like that would be really cool. Part of the experience. You know what we'd love to see here somewhere? It's somebody opening a little business downtown that rents Segways. People will come here from Edmonton to rent a Segway and go down your pathways. Or go into your downtown and do Segway tours and stuff. Cool stuff to do. I know you get into insurance issues, and Canada insurance is just a nightmare for renting things, but there's some, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Roger, you brought it up earlier about a performing arts center. You know, we've had this discussion before that there was multiple locations. There was the potential of partnering with the high school. That's been eliminated now. So we're sort of in the position where we're looking at either somewhere in the downtown core, somewhere, who knows where, or somewhere else. Can you talk about where a performing arts center should be located?
Okay. This is going to get me in trouble because I know both sides of this story. Number one, I saw the studies that gave it at the high school, and I'm glad that's off the table because the study showed the same amount of revenues if it was downtown as if it was at the high school, and that's not true. Revenues drop by 2/3 when they're associated to a high school. The problem is people see, even though you could save a ton of money by putting it at the high school, visitors and even locals see it as a high school property and not a performing arts center. Oh, you would never have professionals in there. See what I mean? So it's a perception that's all over Canada and the US. So I'm glad that's off the table. I understand the cost savings. Number two, the best performing arts centers are in the middle of downtowns, period. The best, because once again, you can monetize them better. Think about this. Think about people's habits. Dining and theater. Dinner and movie. Dinner and a play, a production. They all go together. We walk downtown, we have dinner at a nice restaurant, we're walking downtown, and we're going looking in some of the shops, and then we go right over to the Performing Arts Center. The best performing arts centers in the world are in downtowns, no question. Now, I did hear about the idea of possibly getting 50 acres and building a whole artisan village, where it might have some restaurants, it might have some artisans in action, and the Performing Arts Center would be right there. I understand that, and it has some merit, but then you got to make sure it doesn't compete with downtown. See, downtown is going to get out-competed really shortly as all this retail big box gets developed. I mean, just look around you. It's just popping up everywhere. If you want my honest opinion, it should be in the middle of downtown. It should be downtown. As a matter of fact, you know where it should be? It should be on the river, overlooking the river. Oh my gosh. Right next to a little amphitheater. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a performing arts center that anchored downtown, so that right now downtown, when you get to Railway, it's kind of like we're out of downtown all of a sudden. You know what I mean? And I feel sorry for, where's Ed right here. You know, he's kind of on that, and the rumpled quilt skins and the cool little shops, they're almost seen as kind of on the edge of downtown. This helps open that up, and it gets you over to the river. You got to figure out how to make that pedestrian friendly. But I always think, man, if you had a performing arts center, high bank, overlooking the river with a big deck out in front, where you do cocktail receptions and things like that. Oh my gosh. And then maybe next door you have a small amphitheater there that overlooks the river. I mean, you know what? That would be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, but if you actually put the plaza there, you could mow down the park across the street from the Railway Avenue. It's a baseball diamond right now. Put up another level above the employee parking of the town, and you have a site for that with a house next door, and you have a space. There is a space to build that there. That's or an organic, ability like the plaza is. If the plaza was actually there and functional.
And we looked at that Landmark site and said, do we put a farmer's market there? Do you put a performing arts center there? And we said plaza. You got to do a plaza. I mean, you got to have that public assembly space. So wherever it goes. But here's, just so you know, we have a person on staff named Lainey McMullen. That's all she does is performing arts stuff. And that's her whole career's been on it. Performing arts centers that are in downtowns versus performing arts centers that are out at parks, out in the outskirts, the ones downtowns outperform in ticket sales 3-1 over remote locations, just so you know. And the reason is it's part of the mix of the bigger picture. So now when I was approached and said, well, we're working on getting a 50-acre site, and in that 50-acre site, we're gonna have all kinds of artisan village and everything, I think that could work. I think it could work. I just don't know that it's gonna create more competition for downtown. It kind of takes one of your central gathering places and moves it somewhere else. You know, so if you had your choice and you could put it downtown and it was feasible to do.
But why would you do a 50-acre site off downtown when you're trying to do the same exact thing downtown, and all you have to do is build that theater and all the restaurants and shops go around you naturally? And you
I agree.
don't really have to do
I
it.
totally agree. I totally agree. And I'm sure I talked to people yesterday that were about doing the 50-acre. I never asked them, why there? Why not downtown? Why not downtown? Why not right on the river? And I don't know if it's because the property would be free or I have no idea. Remember, I've only been here a few days, and so I haven't dug deep. But if I had my choice, and you asked me what I honestly think it should be downtown, and quite frankly, if you could have it overlooking the river, it would just be, it just adds depth. The thing is with performing arts, it just gives your community cultural depth. It should be 1,200 seats, not 300. You need 1,200 seats minimum.
I guess I'm just going to being here. I'm just listening to that, and I'm thinking, we own the library. It's like the Landmark site. We own the
library's next to Performing Arts Center's
parking lot, and we own a big chunk of land right there. And I'm kind of thinking, why does the library really need to be on the river as opposed to a Performing Arts Center?
Well, yeah, sure, it doesn't, because highest and best use of plazas and river views is going to be lodging, dining, and retail, and entertainment, not a library. But Performing Arts Centers next to libraries is a good mix. It's cultural depth. Yeah, absolutely. Shared parking and all those kinds of things. Yeah.
My name is Anna. I'm a Landmark and Okotoks Network, and in our research that we submitted to Town Council, we said that based on what we read from your experience, we did say that collaboration has to happen, and the town cannot do this by itself. So I was just wondering, from your experience with other towns, how did that collaboration work the best? If you can just touch that up a little bit. And
are you talking about developing a performing arts center?
Well, everything, like this whole
this
project
whole thing.
downtown. Do you see town as a driving force in the beginning, and then shifting away? Because it did start from the grassroots and from the citizens,
Yes.
That's one of the questions.
Yes. Great question. First of all, the city needs to take the lead to get it started. The town needs to take the lead to get it started. You should do a downtown master development plan. It doesn't have to be expensive. Don't spend a couple $100,000. You know what? You could do it for, I pretty much did it. I mean, I even took pictures of strip malls and said, why don't you bend this out and turn this into a plaza? I mean, this is not rocket science. I think you need to do that. Here's the best site for Performing Arts Center. Here's where the plaza would go. Here's kind of an overlay. Take this, unfortunately Google, I was hoping that Google would have better images like this, but I'm sure you've got them. And then what you do is just do an overlay. And I think the town needs to do that. The town needs to take on parking. Parking, by the way, is never a revenue source. It is an economic development tool. So parking, the only reason I say you can charge for parking in your parking structures is, number one, people will pay to get out of the snow, out of the rain, or out of the sun. So they will pay more to do that on that second, third floor, as long as they have a cover over them. So that makes it more value. I would not charge for on-street parking right now. You don't. I think 2-hour parking is a crime against downtowns. I do understand why you do it. But if you do it, then you say, hey, we have 2 lots that are 4-hour parking. And so I think that the town takes the lead, and then you do that master plan. Here's our plaza. Here's when it's going to be developed. We're working on the funding right now. Here's the vision for downtown in the next 5 years. And then you take that to your existing property owners and say, with a list of who you want to recruit. For instance, Right now, I think you have about 10 restaurants, food places downtown on Elizabeth Street. And on, if I count, over on Railway. I think there's about 10. At least there is in the downtown guide. I think there's something like that. We want it to be 25. So we need to recruit 15 more restaurants over the next 5 years. We'd like to see you have 3 galleries. We'd like to see you have an outfitter store downtown. You know what I mean? That where they lean up the kayaks out there and the canoes, and they you know, because this is an outdoor sports kind of place. We want to make sure they're all organic, new. So, you know, we want to have somebody that has a bike rental place right downtown, like they do in Canmore. And you know, and what we want to do, what you do is you make up a list of the 30 businesses we want to recruit. Then you go to Yvonne and you say, Yvonne, you know what, when we redevelop your property and stuff, we will help you, the town will help you recruit your tenants for you without charging you a real estate commission. And by the way, we're not trying to compete with commercial realtors because we want them to help do this too. But the point is to get this going. The town needs to take the lead because the town needs to be the facilitator with 100 different property owners all with their own agendas. Somebody needs to be the facilitator to do that. Who's best suited to do it? Probably the Economic Development Planning Department of the town. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? A little bit?
Then how does this shift in the future? Or does it shift?
It does shift. Because once you get going, it's going to go on its own. Canmore is a perfect example of that. You know what? Before the 1988 Olympics, Canmore was a mining town. It was rough and tumble mining. Were you there before? You weren't even. 96 you got there. And so it made this transition. Mining went away. The Nordic Center really put Canmore on the map in the 88 Calgary Olympics. But since then, and so the town had to take the lead in what it was doing downtown and everything. But now it doesn't. Now the downtown is putting the brakes on people, sometimes too much. See what I mean? So for you, what's going to happen is the town's going to get going. Once it gets some momentum, it's going to go going on its own. And then the town will shift gears a little bit to be a little bit, make sure it doesn't get too Wild West. You know what I mean? So the town will shift gears. But I believe that it will be driven by the town working with its existing downtown property owners, not tenants. We want to help the tenants, but the property owners are the one that control the hours. By the way, here's what we do. I'm going to use, Yvonne, is it okay if I use you? She knows I'm going to do it anyway, so you're being such a good sport. Her property. Here's what my pitch would be. Yvonne, you know, I'd like to come and sit down with you for a couple hours. I don't know what your debt service is on your building. I don't know how many square feet you have in there and everything. But you know what? We want to help you double your revenues. And I think we can do it in 5 years. Would you be okay for that? See what I mean by this conversation you did have? We want to build some parking structures so you don't have to worry about parking structures. But there's 2 things we want from you in exchange. We want you to tear down your existing building. We want you to build a new building, and we want you to give you 0 setbacks. So it's right there off the sidewalk. So there's not this buffer of parking where it should be landscaping. We, the town, will landscape the front of your building. We will spend $30,000, and we will not tear it out. Okay, we will spend $30,000 helping you beautify the front of your building and doing the landscape for your building. And you will build that, and then we, the town, want to do a partnership with you where we would get like a 100-year lease to build a parking structure with you there, you know, and if you don't want to build it yourself, you know, parking structures are hard to break even. I mean, unless you're charging a fortune like they do in, you know, Calgary and other big cities. And say, so we'd like to do a land partnership with you, but here's the 2 things we want. We want to make sure that your first floor is all retail or restaurants, no offices. So that's what we expect from you. Your second floor can be lodging, it could be housing, it could be offices. And here's the other deal. Your first floor leases, we want to make sure you include in your lease agreement that they will be open no later than 11 o'clock in the morning, and they will stay open until at least 8 o'clock at night. Because 70% of all consumer spending takes place after 6 p.m. and your downtown for the most part is closed. And you wonder why when we live here, we just head right over to Walmart, Staples, Costco. Costco's probably open till 8. Walmart's open till 11. They're open till 11. All these places are open later for a reason, because that's when the spending takes place and downtown doesn't get it. So the two things I would ask from Yvonne, 3 things, is number 1, you're going to build a new building. Number 2, we're going to do everything we can so that you can double the rent you're getting now to pay for that new building, because, you know, it's going to cost a lot more to build one than it is just to do the one existing. And we want you to help. We want to help. And by the way, we will help you. We will help recruit those businesses for your first floor. Now, if I come into that and it's a true partnership where my goal is to help her be financially rewarded far more than she is today, that's hard for a town to do, but that needs to be the bottom line. The bottom line is I am going to help Yvonne take her property and double the value of it and double her revenue. And we as a town will help doing that, because you know what, when she doubles the value of her property, we just doubled the tax base, and that's cash to the city. Does that make sense? But it has to be, it can't be, you know what I see a lot of times in economic development? Yvonne, you know, your building is not really that pretty. I was ruder than that yesterday. I said she had the ugliest building downtown, you know, and it's not, it just doesn't have a lot of curb appeal. But by the way, I thought about that. You know the strip mall when you first come into downtown? Yeah, I think it's probably uglier than your building. That owner's probably here now too. But the point is, if I was to go, you know, Yvonne, we're really trying to make downtown a beautiful, pedestrian-friendly place. We really want you to tear down your building and build a new building and bring it right up to the sidewalk, put your parking in back. You gonna do it? No way, because it doesn't make any economic sense. See what I mean? I mean, none of these strip malls are going to go out there and change their strip malls and everything just because we want to make the town better and friendlier. It has to be rewarded. I mean, that's why people own commercial real estate. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this partnership between the town and these merchants has to be with their best interest, and the town benefits, because when they invest, that's how the town benefits. So how can we help Yvonne do that, and your spa? I mean, you name any of these places. How can we have Ed? I gave him a bad time yesterday. You got to change your menu board. You need to be open more days of the week. He's trying to raise a family there. You know, the reason they do that they're not open every day, because we talked about it, is because he has a lifestyle that he's trying to protect. Well, how do we get Chippy's, what is the fish and chip place? How do we get them to be open on Monday and Tuesday? So we got to figure out, well, how can we do this so that we can help Ed be open more hours? You know, and does it even make sense? You know what I mean? And we have to do that all with the best interest of heart. But you have to do it one-on-one.
And actually, I really appreciate what you're saying, Roger, and what's been missing is an understanding of, it's not that people want to be the way they are, it's just that, bottom line, you have a bank, you have a cash flow question, and so it has to perform. And that's the reason why the restaurant went out of where the dental office is because the truth is the only people who can afford the building is the dental, a professional that has a different revenue stream. So it's hard to put retail in unless there's something that's going to actually flow in. So I really appreciate the comment.
And notice how it comes all the way back to the plaza. What comes first is people on a consistent basis. You can't do 10 events downtown that have 3,000. You're going to have Chili Fest Saturday, right? What's that? Chili Fest. Yeah, Chili Fest. That's tomorrow, right? It's going to bring 10,000 people downtown, right? Could 10,000? So you're going to have 10,000 people down there. You know what? How's that going to help Yvonne or anybody else downtown the other 364 days of the year? That's why it has to be a plaza that's consistent. See what I mean? It has to be consistent people. And by the way, it's not about bringing Calgary downtown every day and having 10,000. Wouldn't it be cool if you had 1,000 more people downtown 250 days of the year after work? That's enough to get retailers to pay more for rent, get people to invest in their buildings. That's why it comes first. The plaza is the most expensive thing on here, and it should be your top priority. Ed.
So our event coordinator, Mark Doherty, is here. So
yes.
for $500,000 a year, could you Is that enough monetization to fill that place 250 days a year?
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you imagine if, remember what I said about having 3 people?
You talking about paying him $500,000?
But if he had, so if he had a staff, if it was him and 2 other people, full-time, and they had a place to program, and you gave him the staffing and the resources, he's absolutely right. He could easily do that.
And can you prove that to the council and Bill Robertson? And
you know what you need to do?
Can Mark do that without another $100,000 study on the
Absolutely.
of downtown? Like
Absolutely.
You know what Mark does? That's what he does every day, and he does a great job at it. And can he prove to it?
You know what I do?
Get the $500,000.
I want you to do it. I want you to do a trip, and you can bring me with you. I want you and I to go over to Rapid City and talk to Dan Seffner for 2 days, and you'll come back with a plan, because they've been doing it for 3 years and it works. See what I mean? Go to Rapid City and ask them. You don't need to go hire more consultants or studies. We've already done it. We've already done it. We already researched 100 of these.
So where's the next closest monetized plaza that's in a town or city? That's easier to do. Yeah, Cedar Rapids, the next closest one that's a successful?
Well, I would go to, you know what, Rapid City? I would go to Rapid City. Rapid City, South Dakota.
How close do we have another one?
You know, I'm trying to think of, you could go to Canada Place in Vancouver, which is basically a huge convention center, and they now have restaurants out there, but I call it a concrete jungle. It's not where the locals hang out. They hang out in Gastown. Robson Square is a little bit that way, Robson Square in downtown Vancouver. But you know what? I don't know any in Edmonton, and I don't know any in Alberta that have done this. I have seen places like Kelowna, BC has done one. They do ice skating in the rink and everything, but they don't monetize it. They don't do the complete job. This is something that's fairly new. They're doing it all over the United States. Fort Worth, Texas. I could give you 50, 60, 70 places in the United States. They're doing it in Halifax on the waterfront, but Rapid City is a whole lot closer than Halifax and cheaper to get to. But I don't know any place in Alberta and very few places in BC that are doing it. This is new. Okay, I know Revelstoke. Do they have a programmed year-round plaza?
Yeah. They have concerts every weekend.
They do. But during the week, do they have like ice and different, just so it's always 250 days a year?
Always.
Well, there you go. See, I didn't even know that.
Public washings, they do every Monday night, every Saturday and Monday night, they have a farmer's market year round.
Wow. Yeah, we've got 100 case histories. So there's one, Revelstoke. I mean, that's not, that's a little bit of a drive, but you get to go through the mountains.
Roger, it's Whistler.
Well, of course. Of course.
Plaza that they have, and that's fairly new, and they have programming there all summer long. That's only been there 2 years.
We both have a history in Whistler. So I was on the development team for Whistler when I first started my career. I'm going to take a little side trip. I used to work in the concert industry. I did tour management for the largest concert company in the world, Concerts West. I managed tours for, you ready? I'm going to ask you the years. You try to guess. I managed the tours for the Eagles, Chicago, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I did the Fleetwood Mac Tusk tour. And the big claim to fame is I did the Saturday Night Fever tour for the Bee Gees. Now, who wants to guess what years that was? Late 70s, 79, 80, and 81. I became good friends with this guy from 1960s rock and roll, Paul Revere. Paul Revere and the Raiders. How many people have ever heard of Paul Revere and the Raiders? You're just dating yourself. He said, Roger, I know these people in Canada trying to do this destination resort. You're a good organizer, a good promoter. Go up and help them. And so that's how I got involved with Whistler in the very, very early days, when Interwest first got there. And, but an interesting thing is, when the Olympics came to Vancouver, I was talking to some people at Interwest, and they were for sale. Interwest got caught up into the recession. They had a lot of very high-end second homes, and the second home market crashed. And they came up to me and said, Roger, we learned a lot. We're not in the ski industry. That's just how we get people here in the winter, because Whistler does more business in the summer than it does in the winter. And it's because of the plaza. All of Whistler Village is all pedestrian, and they bring buskers. They have these little gazebos, and they'll bring buskers and entertainers. It's a good example. I usually don't use it because people see it as a resort versus a town, but it is a town. It's 12,000 people live there year-round now. But it is a good example. And by the way, where did we learn that stuff? Way back in the early 80s, we went to Europe, where she's from. Into Germany, Italy, Spain, all those countries where this has worked for centuries. And so this is fairly new, program these plazas and everything, but just like Whistler, it has to be programmed. It can't just be empty space, and it has to be monetized. Everything is all retail on Whistler Way, their village. It's all monetized. So hopefully that answered your question, Ed. So if you need to do a best practices mission, head over to Revelstoke, head over to Rapid City. I'd love to see Mark go over to Rapid City. I think you'd just learn a fortune. Yeah, you just learn a lot about how to make it work. And they've made mistakes. Their stage is too small. The plaza's too small. They're now thinking about closing off the side street next to that one, by the way.
Okay, so now we have Old Town Okotoks, we have a retail association that...
that should turn into a BIA.
Well, exactly. We have half participation and as far as dues, and then we have 6 very hardworking people who do all the work. Yeah. So people who don't even pay their dues get the benefit of our marketing, and I don't want to get it wrong that I do a lot of hard work, because I don't. Yeah. But it's the same 5 people or 6 people that have been on that board for.
And after a while, you get burned out.
Oh, I burned out a long time ago, but they're not.
But you should have one of the things, if we were doing one of these plans for you, we'd say one of the first things you do is create a BIA, a Business Improvement Association. Okay. That is something you need to do, and they're all over Canada. And basically you're creating a BRZ. So what you're doing is turn downtown a BRZ, which opens up provincial money and everything. We worked in all 13 of them in Edmonton. We worked in all those BRZs.
So I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a business revitalization zone. So when you create a zone in a part of a town that is a revitalization zone, it opens up federal and provincial money to help do some of these things. And then you have a Business Improvement Association, a BIA, which is your downtown association. That is a formal association that is funded either by square footage or it's funded by so much a year, and everybody pays for it. Everybody pays into it, and it's pro rata depending on the type of business they are. There's different ways you can form them. So that's 2 things you need to do that would become the mechanism to make this all work together.
So who brings that to?
The town would usually, this is part of the whole, let's design the plaza, let's design these parking structures, let's do our master development plan downtown. And now that we've created this design of this downtown, what it could look like, how these strip malls could create 0 setbacks and move the parking somewhere else. Once we solve some of those issues, then what you say, and then I would go to Yvonne and say, by the way, Yvonne, we also want to make sure that you are part of our Business Improvement Association, which will have an annual due, and it might be a couple $1,000s a year, but here's what we're going to do with that money. You need to do a plan. What you need to have here is branding. What do you want downtown to be known for? Development. What do we have to do so we own it? Because right now you say we're hip happening, but it's not here yet. It's what you aspire to be. Well, it's a promise. You got to deliver on the promise. Marketing. How do we tell the world? Action plan. The days of strategic plans are over. Forget it. No more strategic plans. Strategies, goals, and objectives. That's why a strategic plan should never take more than 3 pages. You need an action plan that's like 30 pages thick. They would say, here's recommendation number 1, half a page. Recommendation number 2, and it's all in chronological order, and you work on it. And by having a BIA, an official BIA, now all of a sudden you are an official nonprofit organization that can get provincial money. Separate from the town. Even though you're taxing yourselves, it makes you an authority that way. And so that might be your official organization for your downtown business. How you market together, how you promote together, and how you do beautification together, and some things that are ongoing. Because remember, the city is a partner. That means you have to do your side too. That's what a BIA does. And then by becoming a business revitalization zone, a BRZ, then all of a sudden you can open up some other pots of money you might not otherwise get access to. Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I just wanted everyone else to. I know the answer.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question to kind of Anna and what Ed's on about who do you see doing that programming? Is it a town function or a joint function between the town and the BIA, or like how are they doing it in Rapid City? It seemed like they had a nonprofit going on.
It is. In the case of, you can do it different ways. Typically, I think if it was me, I would probably, and remember, I don't know all of the inner workings. I mean, I haven't spent any time with the mayor at all other than to give him a bad time. But typically, in Rapid City, they created an organization called Destination Rapid City. It is their BIA. And so the BIA, in their case, Destination Rapid City, is the one that does the programming. So Mark might work for that organization. See what I mean? Or he may say, well, no, I'm going to be the conduit with the city and you have your own 3 people. The reason typically I pull it away from the town a little bit is sometimes politics get in the way of, well, you had a band there that we don't think is very good and they use some bad words and we have citizens complaining and see what I mean? And all of a sudden now the town's involved, where if it's the downtown, it gives you a little arm's length. It gives you a little more flexibility on how you raise money. Because remember, this organization now is going to raise money. Well, how do we pay? Do we have to write a check to the city? Do we have to go, or to the town? Do we have to go get a business license? Do we have to? And what happens is sometimes the regulations of working in a city government to manage a Main Street Square type of development gets in the way. So sometimes if you have a BIA, and that's what they did in Rapid City. They created Destination Rapid City. It is the Downtown Association, and they also manage the square. 3 people are dedicated to the square. So 3 people would be dedicated to your plaza, and then you might have another 2 people that are dedicated to everything else in downtown. Because remember, we still got to take care of the people way down. We got to take care of the people down at Yvonne's Inn. And so you can't just put it, all your BIA is only focused on that. It would have its staffing. And you could say, well, no, we're going to leave the plaza up to the city and they'll program it and everything. But I kind of like a little arm's length distance just so that you don't get swallowed up in politics and red tape and administrative work. And so, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It could work both ways. We've seen it both ways, by the way. We've seen cities actually run them and do very, very well. Mark?
Roger, I was just going to say that, just speaking from my background in Peterborough, Ontario,
yeah, that's right.
The BIA ran all the events, and it wasn't, our plaza was downtown, the whole area, and events moved around. And it happens about every 2 weeks that we would do an event that would draw anywhere from 15 to 35, 40,000 people. The city, however, supported us in other means, but they didn't have an event coordinator. So that was sort of my role within that BIA, as well as the liaison between the merchant group and the political leaders. So that's sort of how that worked out.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And but that's why you do this plan. You go through this process to sort those kinds of things out. The town is going to take the leadership role in this whole thing to get it going. And so I've got lots of other questions. So I'm going to go, yes. Sorry. I'm not trying to shut you down. Yeah.
Roger, this weekend we have a rodeo coming up.
That's what I heard tonight, right?
In August we had a Highland Games just completed recently. Over at High River, which is 9 kilometers away, we have the Little Bridges rodeo in, I think it's the spring, and we have chuck wagon races and things like that. Would you discuss the relationship between what the development of a plaza, as you propose here, has to do with bringing people who attend those events in to Okotoks, so it's not just the locals and not just centered in the center of town, and then 2, encouraging the development of other such festivals in other nearby communities by having this facility and this program available to be an additional draw to people in addition to the festivals that they put
And that's a really good point. I mean, it's like the rodeo. It's like the Stampede. How do you get all these people to go to the Stampede into downtown Calgary or even into Okotoks? I mean, quite frankly, if I was coming to the Stampede, I'd stay in Okotoks and then commute up there for it. But first of all, that's why I said the trolleys between Seaman Stadium, that's a perfect example. Creating that link so that when the game is over or before the game, why don't you head downtown, if you don't want hot dogs and beer at the game, we've got a dozen restaurants right downtown that are awesome, and then just catch the trolley over to the game or vice versa. Go over there, catch the trolley downtown, and then come back for the game. You gotta link those. You have to link those. Sports tournaments. Shane, where'd Shane go? Shane, you're going to be hosting National Little League. What was it?
The World Children's Baseball Fair.
There you go. World Children's Baseball Fair. When's it going to happen?
2016.
2016. Where's it going to happen?
Seaman Stadium. I think it's in June.
Okay. How do we get all those moms, dads, and all those people into downtown? Because you know what's going to happen? They're going to stay at the Best Western. They're going to stay at the Lakeview. Is this Lakeview? I always want to say Lakeside, but Lakeview. They're going to stay in those places, and you know what they're going to see is all the change around them. They don't even know about downtown. You create those trolleys, you create your wayfinding system, you need to make downtown that gathering place. And when you have a plaza, it will be the gathering place. And by the way, it'll have a name. And so, what is it? Is it KLM? No, it's TRM. And so what's really cool is that at the TRM Plaza, with the $2 million naming right, no, but anyway, I'm just, but I'm glad you're a good sport. You and Yvonne,
TRM has actually sponsored this program.
Oh, good. Well, see, there you go. Thank you very much. This is what you call biting the hand that feeds you. Yeah.
Other programs throughout the town, schools, sports.
Right. And the plaza will have a name. And I hope it's not Old Town Plaza. No offense. I just didn't see the history. I was just going, that's not who you are. But you could sell the naming rights for it. But the point is, they're already a sponsor and everything, and I was just doing that in jest. But the point is, with this plaza, it's going to have a name. It's going to be an attraction all by itself already. You got to check out what's going on, whether it's a plaza, the square, what's going on in the square. And I think all your events, you're absolutely right, you have to link them into that. That is, remember what I said, the heart and soul of every community besides its people is its downtown. If you want people to live here, you know what site selectors do? Non-tourism, non-anything. Site selectors for factories. You know what they do? They go right into the downtown, and the health of the downtown economically is the health of the community. Is this a place my employees would want to live? And it is. Downtown is kind of you need to work on that one. But absolutely, you got to link these. And that plaza is going to bring all those people. Because you know what? We can come here from Calgary, Lethbridge, all these other cities. I don't care. Claresholm, Cardston, you name it, anywhere. Red Deer. We can come here. We can go to Seaman Stadium and then get right back in our car and go back to High River or wherever else without ever spending any money outside that stadium. You got it. That plaza is going to get those people another reason to come here and stay here. And once they discover downtown, guess what? They're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their families, say, my gosh, we got a chance. We didn't have a chance to eat over at the Bistro 1882 but next time we're going to do that. And so that's what you're going to do. So absolutely right. Absolutely.
I come from Vegas, and I grew up in a place like this. What I see there is also ecotourism, and I know we have 40 kilometers of pathways, and in my town we have little coffee places and shacks, gathering places around the river. Have you ever seen that working in North America, or
yes.
Would you suggest that? Because I'm social, if I go on biking or walking, I want to sit and have some healthy drink or coffee and chat with people. And this is the point of the whole thing, being social, and so my question is how to get these pathways be more.
Yeah, and what you can do is we have seen it work in many, many cities where what they will do is have little vendor booths. Like every kilometer during the summer, we have an opportunity for a little vendor booth. That vendor booth might be selling bottled water, health food, drinks, you know what I mean, healthy if you want. Maybe it's a cup of coffee, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, we've seen those. And the other thing is, you know what, a couple other things I'm going to bring up. Is along your pathway, I didn't see a lot of trash receptacles. I didn't even see very many trash receptacles anywhere in downtown, and there's trash on the streets. You should have them like every 100 meters or even 50 meters, there should be another trash receptacle. And they should be decorative. They shouldn't be just, you know, ugly concrete things. By the way, I want you to start eliminating the words concrete and asphalt in downtown. You know, that's why this plaza, there's going to be no concrete, no asphalt. It's going to be paver stones. I mean, it's going to be a plaza. Cobblestones, that kind of a thing. So with what you're talking about is, yes, during the summer months, you should monetize your trails. These are all small business opportunities. You want to create small business opportunities, particularly for your youth. We've even seen high schools say, we're going to go out on the pathway in a really important intersection during the summer month, and we're going to put a little ice cream stand out there, and it's going to teach us how to run business as high school students. And they raise a little bit of money for band or uniforms or whatever else is that they're working on. And you need to monetize these things. Because you know what? If you have people coming here and they're using your sports facilities, they're using your trails, and they're not spending any money here, what have you done? You haven't gained anything. I mean, you've created a great amenity for your locals, but you haven't monetized it for visitors and other people that might want to come and use them. So those are great things, and we have seen that work in other areas. And I try and think of some examples right off. If you email me and I can give you some, here's some examples of what they do. But what they do is just temporary permits. And what they do is one thing you want to make sure you don't do is put businesses along the pathways that are going to give people no reason to come downtown. So like when you have food trucks, I'd be really resistant to having a food truck that was an ice cream truck when you already have a little ice cream shop. Now, if that ice cream shop isn't open in consistent hours and days, then maybe what you do is you fill in. See what I mean? So you always want to make sure that we're not out competing them. But you know what? But if there's some opportunities, I think you absolutely need to do that. I'm big into monetizing your facilities. I mean, it creates business opportunities. What's that?
Being people-friendly.
People-friendly.
That's how you monetize.
Absolutely. Everything that we talk about, plaza and everything, the plaza, parking, one thing about downtown, it's about people. It's not about places. It's always about people. You know, when I took the picture that I showed yesterday of there was a woman at the home ground. Did I get that right? Yeah, the coffee. Yeah. There was a lady sitting there. Another lady walked up there. She'd seen, they got up and hugged. I showed that picture yesterday. That is what downtowns are about. When I saw that, I went, oh my gosh, camera, click. You know, and that is what downtowns are about. It's about, you know, I teach for Disney Institute. Used to teach for Disney Institute. And Disney is all about people. The wayfinding is about people. When they get off their car, when you wait in line, they make sure that 40-minute wait in line is not so boring. As much as they can, they try to put interest in it. When in Disney, everything is about people. And you know what the big word is in Disney? Connections. We want to connect with each other. We want to connect with our roots. We want to connect with our business people. You know, I got to tell you that of all the places that we ate, the place I felt really endeared to was Ed and the bistro. And here's why. He didn't know who we were until the end. And he said, you know, this is my wife and I. I said, I was confused because it says Bistro Provence out there, but then when I walk in here, manager says Bistro 1882. He says, there's a story behind that. He says, you know, I bought this place 3 years ago. I'm making up stuff now. I think that was about right, 3.5 years ago. He says, my wife and I run it. She's a sous chef. She's back there. And this place used to have a French chef. And he went and told me his story. And you know what? Now I know who Ed is. I haven't met his wife yet, the better half. No, I'm kidding. Right? She probably is the better half, right? Okay, there you go. Just want to make sure you can admit that. But he said, and we've got our kids upstairs, and this is our lifestyle and everything. That's what downtowns are about, helping us connect. That is what it's about. It's always about people. And you know what? It's about the people of Okotoks. It's not about visitors. Because even if you want to attract tourism, if you don't hang out in your town, neither will they. They go where you go. We eat at the restaurants where we find the most local pickup trucks. We do. And so this is always about people. Your plaza is about people. That's why I said, when I saw those chairs glued down to the ground, screwed down to the ground, I went, that is a crying shame. I mean, this is not about people. And you know what? I can tell you right now, because Shane said, you know what happens when you have an event on the stage? You know how there's 4 chairs? One person will sit sideways on a chair facing the stage. On the other side of the table, they will sit sideways on the chair facing the stage, and they will sit here. The chair that's facing this way is empty. Because it's not about people, it was about safety and it's about vandalism. It has to be about people. And that's what makes downtowns work. Yes?
One of the things you touched on yesterday was involving places like the Saskatoon Farm, Caven Farms, the Champagne Company, with our downtown core. I'm also with the Old Town Okotoks group, so this is something that we've struggled with in the past. How, when those are complete entities on their own, you can go there, you can have your entertainment, you can have your meal, how do we then attract from them and get them into the downtown without basically cutting off our nose to spite our face? Because if they eat there, they go there, how do we draw them back into the downtown core?
First of all, a couple of things. If people come here, visitors, and they're coming here for outdoor recreation, or let's say they go out to Caben Farms, they go out to Saskatoon, they go out to all those things. We're doing all that during the day. By the way, almost all of them close at 5. Because the other day we were there, they closed at 5. What do you got going after 5? This is what people, this is what downtowns don't get, and it drives me nuts, is that we work from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it is. We work those hours. We're at school during those hours. We are doing other stuff during those hours. And as visitors, we are outdoor recreating during those times, because those farms close at 5. We're out there on the weekends. We're out there on Saturdays. I was out there with Jay and everything. And you know what? Saskatoon, we went to Caben Farms. They were closing right at 5 when we got there. We went to Saskatoon. We got there about 5:20 or whatever, you know, the distance drive there. They were already closed. There were some people golfing, but that was it. And that's 5% of the population golfs. And so when we were out there doing those things, they were all closing at 5. Now where do we go? And if you don't have that plaza, if you don't have a downtown, where do we go at the end of the day and on weekends? You know what happens is we just go home and you don't see the spending. We just go back to High River or wherever we're from. And so you won't see the spending. That is why downtowns need to be the place we go after work and on weekends. And I said this yesterday, your merchant would be better off closing at 11, opening at 11 in the morning and staying open till 8 o'clock at night. And by the way, the toy store last night was open till 8. They can't do it by themselves. I asked somebody yesterday, if South Center, is that your nearest mall? If South Center, some of the stores opened at 9, 10, and 11 in the morning, would you go to the mall before 11? But some of the stores will be open. You would wait till they're all open, wouldn't you? If those stores closed at 5, 6, and 7, when would you go to the mall? On weekends, because you're busy the rest of the time. Would you go there after 6 if there was 3 stores left open till 7? We don't. So the toy store staying open on Thursdays till 8 o'clock is great, but you know what? I'd start on Fridays. I do Fridays, Saturdays, stay open late. Sunday's the day you close at 6. That's the one day you can close at 6. If you're going to close a day Monday, I think some of your businesses are doing Monday. That has to be consistent. I think that's a good day to pick. Except for holidays. This is going to be Labor Day weekend. But that is the other thing is that's how you get back downtown is now that you're done doing all that stuff, you got to head downtown. We got an amazing plaza, and I guarantee you there's something going on tonight because 250 days there is. Oops. Just want to wake us all up.
Just a follow-up question to that. One of the other issues we've had, and we've heard this over and over again, is when we have things like car shows that bring 10,000 people, a lot of businesses will not open, which obviously we struggle with that when we try and convince them to open. Those that do say it's the best day of the year. How do we convince them that they should be open? It's like we have tried relentlessly. I mean, you have 10,000 people on your street, and we can't get businesses to open.
I'll give you good case history. I was just working in Rapid City again. Rapid City, every Thursday night in the summer, they do a thing called Summer Nights. It averages 10 to 12,000 people. And there's a gun shop downtown. And he said, you're putting this Summer Nights right in front of my gun shop here, and not a soul is coming in my store. And I said, well, you know, I'm really sorry, but nobody's going to come into your store during Summer Nights, buy a gun, and then walk outside and show everybody. And they're not going to lug that gun around. And so what happens is, he says, so what happens is my sales dry up that night. So we actually had the police department in Rapid City do a survey of people that were gun owners and how many of them actually purchased guns from the gun shop. And out of the people that own guns, you know, whether it's rifles, hunting guns, and everything, we're not talking about all, you know, Old West stuff. And so they got this survey, and they asked these people and say, where did you get your gun? And 90% of them got their guns at that shop. And then they said, how did you know about that shop? And 70% of them said from Summer Nights. They did not buy guns during that night. We might not go in your shop that night. We might not go into the toy store while there's those 13,000 people, but now the 13,000 people know you exist. And they will come back another time when it's easier to buy stuff and take it out to their car because they're busy enjoying the event. So we tell merchants all the time that you will probably not see sales come during the event, but you will see your sales over a year grow because of that event. Because you got exposure to 13,000 other people that never may have known that you existed. And so the merchants have to understand that this is not an opportunity to make a lot of sales. It's an opportunity to let people discover what you have and what you're about so that when they're ready to buy toys, flowers, whatever it is, or home accents, that you exist. And that is really, really the key to that. And we have seen this say, well, all it does is shut me down. They don't understand the value of having 10,000 people know that they exist and even come in and looky-loo in their buildings. And so there are studies that have been done that prove that sales go up generally because of these events. Now, the general goal is not to have 10,000 people downtown 10 times a year. The goal is to have 500 people more downtown 250 days a year. And then they'll get more benefit out of that. But it's great exposure. But it's education. By the way, you're not alone. It happens ever. I've heard that countless times, that very same thing.
Roger, it's 11 o'clock now. I know you have a flight.
I got a flight to catch.
Do you have time for a couple of more questions?
Sure. I mean, I really want to help, and I do have to go catch a flight here, so I got a little bit of time. You know, maybe we'll take another 10 minutes or so. Does that sound good? I thank you so much for staying so long. I hope this is helpful. Anna?
Okay. You also work for Sierra Realty.
Oh, you got your microphone right there.
I also work for Sierra Realty, kitty corner from Town Hall, and we are open from 9 till 5, you know, weekdays. You did mention Business Improvement Association, so we merchants have to coordinate, and maybe somebody will step up as a leader. But from the Park Hill side, would you agree that coordination should happen inside Business Improvement Association, or do you see a use of downtown committee? Because we did read that in some of your works that you suggest forming downtown committee, collecting taxes from downtown merchants, you know, and stuff. And do you see the need to hire some people to work for downtown committee? Or is it just volunteering?
Well, typically it's volunteering, and I'm hoping I'm going to get this right. Right now you have a downtown committee, a kind of a loose organization that really does, it's all volunteer effort. And first of all, I do think sometimes that the town can actually get funding to help establish a BIA. I think that it is worth getting. There are consultants, we don't do that, but there are consulting companies, that's what they do, is help establish BIAs. And I do think you need to do that. Sometimes the town will take the lead on funding that because, you know, just to give them seed money to get it started. And then what you do, because you don't know how you're going to fund it. And the only way you know how to fund it is to talk to property owners and merchants. You know, even if the property owners are going to be assessed that assessment, they're going to still pass it on. And so you need, and sometimes you say, well, you know, a restaurant might pay more for a BIA than TRM might. Because they're a service business, beautification, they're going to get business whether it's beautiful or not. A restaurant, beautification means everything. See what I mean? So there may be, or it's the number of square footage or the number of employees, the type of business. And so you have to orchestrate that with your businesses. And so there are consulting companies, they cost about $30,000 to $35,000 to do. So I'm just giving you just a rough price. And I could give you names. You could spend $70,000. I don't think you need to do that. But I think you do need to contract with somebody. I do think it needs to be an official nonprofit organization because then you could staff somebody. And once you do that, if it is your destination Okotoks and it's your downtown BIA, then you could say, well, how do we, and are we going to be charged with that plaza, you know, or is it going to be the town's going to do that? How do we orchestrate all that? And that's what would come out of that. It would be, how are we going to fund it? Is it a volunteer funding? Typically, volunteer funding doesn't work. And the reason is somebody pays and somebody doesn't. They say, well, they're not paying. Why should I pay? You know, and then all of a sudden we're doing what you're doing now is asking for handouts and trying to fund small things. So I do think it needs to be an official nonprofit organization. The town would probably be the lead organization to give it some seed funding just to get that going. But then the town's not going to, the town can't make you have a BIA. A BIA is your organization, not the town's. But it's a good way to say, we are now an organization that have some funding. We want to work with you. City is your partner. Town is your partner. Make sense? So, yes?
So how did the Chamber of Commerce fit into that?
Let me talk about Chambers of Commerce. Chambers of Commerce were formed to be the lobbying organization for local business. That is the purpose of a chamber. That's a charter for a chamber, to be the lobbying organization for local business. But what has happened to chambers, and the average chamber director lasts 30 months. And the average chamber director spends 80% of his or her time fundraising and dealing with membership issues. And 20% being the lobbying organization. And then chambers of commerce take on tourism, we take on events, we take on, what happens is you're doing so many things you can't be really good at one thing. Here's where a chamber of commerce would be really good. Go into the town and say, we need blade signs. Because some of our members are businesses downtown, and we know that is a hassle or maybe not even allowed to do those blade signs downtown. We are the representative for business. You could take that on, working with a BIA, you know, when it comes together or even between now. So issues like that. So what I would do is I'd have the chamber take some of these lists. What I would do is take this list, which I'm going to get to Shane, and I would say, chamber, we'll take on these 10. Your downtown business volunteers right now, we'll take on these 6. The town might say, and we'll take on 15 of these. Remember, these are suggestions. But some of them may have some good merit. I think they do. You could turn them into recommendations. And so the chamber will play a vital role, particularly when it comes to branding, what do we want downtown to be known for? The best brands come from grassroots effort, not top down. And chamber represents the grassroots effort. So the chamber plays a big role. And so, we'd love to see the chamber really work on that, particularly with product development. Yeah. And by the way, your role, you know, we're talking about downtown. Your role also is, well, what about the small businesses that are, you know, in the outskirts, you know, that aren't involved with this? And so you have a little broader reach than the downtown association would be. Yeah. Okay, and then Yvonne.
Just a real quick question. The one area that we haven't talked about is Elm Street. So I'm really interested in your insights.
Loved Elm Street. Loved it. Couple things is we talked to a lady yesterday that was here that is taking the building right next door. Am I pointing in the right direction with the lions in front? It's going to be a tea house. Oh, there she is. Yes. We went in. It's really cool. So thanks for doing that yesterday. So next May, you're thinking it might open? No, opening next May. She's got a lot of work to do in there. We'd love to see more of that. Yesterday, I showed some signs that I think you could do down Elm Street. Downtown pedestrian wayfinding, was that in this? Yeah, there. We thought doing that because right now you drive down the street, you can't tell whether they're residences, you can't tell whether they're a daycare, you can't tell, you have to look at that plastic banner stretched out. We thought doing something like this so it would still have a nice residential feel. our challenge is it said it was a shopping district, and it wasn't. I mean, you know, so right now you probably should take down those signs. I do think that there needs to be a wayfinding, pedestrian wayfinding. So what happens is for visitors, we're going to go down Elizabeth Street and where it turns into McRae, which I also think that should just be Elizabeth Street. Don't confuse people. So as you add that another one, 62 now, you know. But anyway, I think the potential of that as a pedestrian thoroughfare would be fantastic. Now, couple things is over time, right now there's parking on both sides of the street, and when there's parking on both sides of the street, it's really too narrow to get cars going, so they kind of have to pull over, let a car go this way, and then they pull out and go this way. I think over time as it develops, I think you would get rid of the parking on one side of the street. Or maybe get rid of the parking on one side of the street for like a block or so, and then on the other side for a block or so traffic kind of goes like this. And it would allow you to even widen your sidewalks a little bit more. I don't want you to over-modernize it because I love the historic nature of it. It's just stunning street. It's the most strollable, walkable street in all of Okotoks. And it is phenomenal. I didn't concentrate on a lot because it seemed like it was reverting back more to residential than commercial, and I wasn't sure where you were going as a town with Elm Street, with the street. But I was really glad she's doing the tea house. I think that's how it starts, and I'm so glad it's right next door to this facility because that makes some synergy right here in kind of the beginning area. But I would do stuff like this. I think it fits. Notice these are all homes. This is in Lake Winona, Indiana. And they're all homes and they're all businesses. But you know what? Even if it's a home, you can say this is a private residence, and there's where you put your interpretive sign. And so I think doing something like that, I think it's going to be a slow process. I like businesses like the tea house. I think are a good mix. It's not a good, I don't know that it's really that great of a location for major restaurants. You know, but I think you know what? It'd be fantastic for little art galleries, a glass blowing studio, a little quilt shop. Well, I don't want to compete with rumpled quilt skins, but you know, those kinds of neat little shops. A little, is stamping still something that people do? You know, the stamping that used to be, I don't know if it's still going or not. Those kinds of little shops, I think there'd be a fantastic street for that kind of stuff. I think the tea house is an absolutely perfect fit. I wouldn't make a whole lot of changes on that street because it is what it is, and that's what makes it so wonderful. But over time, I could see just eliminating the parking, you know, on one side. You know what the goal would be? To have no parking. You know, it was brought up, do we close it down and not even have cars on the street? And I don't think that's a possibility because you will always have residential there. You know, but maybe you do it for a couple of blocks if it makes sense. I haven't really figured all that out. But I thought over time it'd be great if it was more pedestrian than vehicular access. You know, parking's pretty limited anyway. I heard property owners complaining that when there's a meeting or something happening here that they can't even get to their house. So I heard that as a visitor just walking down the street. And so, but I wouldn't make too many changes here. I do think the business mix it is zoned commercial, and I think there could be some really cool businesses. Yeah. I think what she's doing is phenomenal. I think it's going to be great. I think it'll be really successful. Those are gathering places. As a matter of fact, if you ever go to Canmore, go to Community. You know Community. I mean, it is the place. It's a little more modern, and you could do something really cool in Victorian, but that community, TEA, is really an incredible place. It is the central gathering place in Canmore, and it's on a back street. It's not right downtown. It's kind of back a block. But, I mean, you know how popular it is, so... yeah, okay, great. And you know, I mean, that place it's cool. It's always full of strollers. And remember, that's your target.
It's beanbags and laptops. Yeah.
Absolutely. Really cool. Okay? Yes, sir. Last question.
I would just like to say, Roger, that the last 2 days have been very insightful. You bring a lot of wisdom, knowledge, experience. We're very happy to have you. I think we're really excited about the future. The time is right. Partnership is what this is all about. At the end of the day, it's truly about people and it's about building community. Thank you for your insights.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much. You know, and yesterday I said, you know, I've worked in 60 cities in this province, and I still mean it. You and Canmore are my two favorite. Part of it is the setting. Part of it is the country setting of it. Part of it is your downtown. Part of it is, you know what really makes this cool is the people. Every single person I've met in this town wants to make a difference, wants to do something good. It takes really good sports like him, like Yvonne, for me to come in and say, you know, and I said some things here that were not maybe very nice or friendly, but you know what? People have taken it and said, well, I see where you're coming from. You know, it's worth the discussion. And I think that it takes a really great community to see that and not feel offended that we said, you know, well, we should do this or this or this. And so you have all the potential in the world. It is a fabulous community. It is really nice. Yeah. Well, see that.
Did we
she
get
would
that
know.
on tape?
There you go. So thank you once again very, very much. Thank you very much.
Certainly like to echo Rick's words. Great presentation yesterday and today. Inspiring workshop for an area, in particular Landmark. Council has some tough decisions to make on that. Again, on behalf of the Council.
You have to just say yes.
I like it. That yes can be very tough.
It's easy for me to say yes.
On behalf of Okotoks Council and staff, please join me in thanking Roger Brooks for being here. Once again, great presentation. Let's have a hand for Roger. Further, ladies and gentlemen, sincerely thank you all for being here today. I want to remind you about our upcoming Community Visioning for the Future session, Lessons from the Future for Cities, Wednesday, September 10th, 2014, at the Foothill Centennial Center, 7 to 9 p.m. Internationally renowned speaker Glenn Heemstra, founder and CEO of Futurist.com, will present the longer-term trends shaping cities and the opportunities we have to create a preferred future over a 50-year horizon. He'll discuss key trends and how we can plan for a vibrant, thriving, and sustainable community for the long term. Come out, bring a friend or two or three or four. We look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.
You're free to go.